Africa. I had a reason to be born there. So we have a God. We have our gods, and we have our mode of worship.
Queens, nod your head if you know you got soul. Women, snap your fingers, let your head wrap go. Come on. Kings, got us feeling like we ain't trapped brown. All my brothers, put your hand on the chest now.
Freedom's what we need, more solutions is the key. Wave the banner of the free, that's the red, black and green. Bringing truth to the streets, water get no enemy. If it's peace, we at ease. If it's war, we don't cease. EYEs on the crackers and police. Never slack up even when we free, cause we ain't free until we get the land, that's the green. Black power, new African, liberated from the thieves. Nothing better else to be.
Queens, nod your head if you know you got soul. Women, snap your fingers, let your head wrap roll. Come on. Kings, got us feeling like we ain't trapped brown. All my brothers, get your hand on the chest now.
Stimulated cause I'm liberated. Rock me African medallion in the middle of the clan. Situation freedom come drum playing by the river. I deliver for my people. It's the sequel of revenge. My friends get ready. Every neat shell valve, every tone shell tail on the mountain I reveal. Throw the shells for light side up. Dark one up in my cup. Pour it out and then I strut. Alafia dear.
Queens, nod your head if you know you got soul. Women, snap your fingers, let your head wrap roll. Come on. Kings, got us feeling like we ain't trapped brown. All my brothers, put your hand on your chest now.
When the African doesn't want to understand or participate in the reason why he was born,
Queens, nod your head if you know you got soul. Women, snap your fingers, let your head wrap roll. Come on. Kings, got us feeling like we ain't trapped brown. All my brothers, put your hand on your chest now.
see, Africa has not been able to contribute its own knowledge to this universe. But we have knowledge in Africa. You understand?
Yeah, of course.
You see, so all these things need to be in the education system of the African countries.
Peace to everybody tapped in, tuned in to the channel, Master Warrior Clan YouTube channel. Please like the show, share the show, tell a friend, we're live. Hold on 1 second, y'all. We're gonna get started, man. I got a treat. Get it in. So look, while people are coming in, man, I'm gonna go ahead and get directly into sharing. Let me do this intro right here. I'm gonna do the intro like this to the build, and then I'm gonna get into the build. So as people coming in, you know, I know probably somebody else live. Who cares?
About 11,500 years ago, people in what's now central Alaska buried two babies in a hearth. One was less than 6 weeks old, and the other was a late-term stillbirth. They stayed there until 2013 when archaeologists found their remains. And this week, a group of researchers published detailed analysis of one of the baby's genomes, its full genetic code, in the journal Nature. Turns out that this one baby's DNA can tell us a lot about our history as a species. It's the most direct evidence we have for how people first came to the Americas and what happened to them afterward. Over the years, researchers have proposed lots of different theories for how the first Americans got here. And these days, there are at least a few things almost everyone agrees. At some point, probably more than 14,000 years ago, people crossed over the Bering Land Bridge between what are now Siberia and Alaska. From there, they spread through North and South America, splitting off into Northern Native American and Southern Native American genetic groups, which are still around today. There are plenty of unresolved questions about this, though, like when exactly the migration happened and why the ancient Native American and East Asian genomes are so different. Enter the babies from this week's paper. The researchers were only able to isolate enough DNA for a full genome analysis from the 6-week-old baby known as USR1. They sequenced USR1's genome and compared it to both ancient and modern genomes from more than 2,500 people. They found that USR1 wasn't nearly as closely related to the Northern and Southern Native American groups as you might think. It's clear they had a common ancestor, but according to the team, the baby's genetic code was so different that it's part of a whole separate lineage, a third group that they're calling the ancient Beringians. That supports what's known as the Beringian standstill model, which suggests that people first came to the areas near the land bridge, aka Beringia, something like 30,000 years ago. But then the Ice Age peaked, and the ice sheets and glaciers made travel so difficult that the people in Beringia were basically cut off from the rest of the world for thousands of years. Hence the standstill part of the name. According to the model, once the climate warmed up a little, people weren't trapped anymore, and they started to move out into the rest of North and South America. If the first Americans were stuck in Beringia for a while, breeding amongst themselves and developing new mutations in their DNA, these changes wouldn't be shared with the East Asian population they came from. So you'd expect there to be a lot of diversity in the ancient Native American genome, and the ancient Beringian lineage tells us there was. The findings also fit what researchers found back in 2015 when they looked at the baby's mitochondrial DNA. That's the separate, smaller genetic code in the cell's mitochondria as opposed to the nucleus. They were able to get good samples from both USR1 and the other infant, USR2. Even though the mitochondrial genome doesn't have as much information as the nuclear genome, it's still a useful tool, and it was enough to show that the two babies were each part of genetic lines you don't generally find in today's Northern Native American populations. In other words, it showed that the babies must have come from a pretty diverse population. And now that we have USR1's nuclear genome, we know that there's more to it than that. The ancient Beringians were a whole separate group, and by comparing USR1's genome to those of other groups, the researchers were also able to flesh out the Beringian standstill model and come up with a much more solid timeline of when and how the first Americans moved in. To be clear, we don't know for sure that this is exactly how it went, but by combining this new evidence with what archaeologists have found in the past, here's what the team thinks happened. People first settled in the area of Northeast Asia near the land bridge around 36,000 years ago. But for a while after that, there were still people going back and forth to the rest of East Asia and genes being shared between the populations. Then, about 24,000 years ago, the cooling climate isolated them from each other. Around 21,000 years ago, USR1's ancestors and the ancestors of both the Northern and Southern Native American groups split into two separate genetic lines. It's not clear whether they crossed over the land bridge before or after the split, but either way, they still couldn't get very far because of all the ice. Then, sometime around 15,700 years ago, the Northern and Southern Native American groups split off from each other. And this was right about when the climate finally warmed up a bit and people started to move farther east, eventually spreading throughout the Americas. About 4,000 years later, two babies were born and died in eastern Beringia. And now, 11,500 years after that, their remains have brought us the closest we've ever been to understanding how the indigenous peoples and cultures in the western half of the planet came to be. Thanks for watching this episode of News, and a special thanks to our president of FACE, SR Foxley. Thanks, SR. Also, if you like this video...
All right, so that's our introduction. That's our introduction right there. Can't get no better than that. So let's get to the meat and potatoes of the argument, and let's have some fun. Let me make sure that y'all can see this on the screen. All right, everything should be cool. So let's talk about the origins of Native Americans. Following in Morton's footsteps, Herlicka believed that the study of human skeletons, particularly skulls, could answer the controversial question of the racial origins of Native Americans. He and his colleagues, including Ernest Houghton of Harvard University, thought their approach would complement archaeological approaches to this question. It would necessitate an extensive study of thousands of skeletons from tribes across the continent in order to understand the variations and work out their infinities. As a result, Museums and universities rush to build a large research collection of representative skeletons from all races in order to measure and determine their racial origins. And so you have Hederlich acquired and examining the Muncie skeletons. He created a table after table of measurements and classifications, noting the degree of pronouncement of the Nasian depression at the nose area, the shape of the palate, the length of the humera, the upper arm bone, and the bicentellar, which is the length of the femur. He painstakingly compared these observations to those of Negroes, whites, and Indians of other tribes. He concluded that the Muncie remains were indeed the same race as the Lenape and Eastern tribes, but that the few brachycephalic individuals had likely married into the community from another tribe, possibly the Shawnee. He also noted quite definitely, without any reference to the evidence upon which he based his conclusion, that one individual in the cemetery was a white European. Physical anthropology of the Lenape or Delawares is a typical example of the research Hederlich and other physical anthropologists conducted on thousands of skeletons across North, Central, and South America, trying to understand the origins of Native Americans. Remember, this gentleman is one of the people who uses the candor of race science as an opportunity to speak on these different skull bases and how things are facilitated among them and so on and so forth. So in other words, we have to be very careful with how he came to his conclusion, because we know that it was biased. Now, the cranial studies from Hederlich and other physical anthropologists, as well as studies of contemporary Native American phenotypic variations, hair, skin color, eye color, connected them generally with Asian populations. Hederlich studies of tooth morphology revealed a particular trait, a shovel shape of the incisors, which Native Americans share with East Asians. Later studies conducted by dental anthropologists linked Native Americans more specifically to Northeast Asians, with whom they share a high frequency of certain dental traits. So, in a paper in 1916, Hederlich summarized the state of physical anthropological investigations into Native American diversity and laid out an argument for their origins based on biological data. Here's what was revealed in the 1916 paper. Native Americans vary physically, but not that much. They clearly have a single origin. There is no evidence that they evolved independently on the American continent, as no pre-modern remains have been found, and there were no advanced anthropoid apes on the continents for them to evolve from, only monkeys. All fossils and archaeological evidence from the rest of the world argues against the Americans being the origin of the human species. Because prehistoric man and primitive means of transportation, it was logical that he could have come only from the parts of the world that lie nearest to America, that is, Northeast Asia. Native Americans physically resemble Asians in all of their features, further supporting this theory. Because Native Americans are not physically homogeneous but fall into several subtypes, there were probably multiple migrations out of Asia. This is from the anthropologists with sketchy backings. Now, which takes us full circle, had become evident to physical anthropologists of the earlier 20th century that the scenario that Jose de Acosta had originally proposed on the basis of biblically inspired logic in the 16th century was, in fact, supported by multiple lines of biological evidence. Hederlich himself believed that Native Americans arrived in the north via a land bridge that stretched from Siberia to North America. He conducted a great deal of field work in Alaska trying to test this idea. So here you have it. He said, I thought the Abo, they was always here. The genetic puzzle. Long before techniques were invented that allowed scientists to amplify and sequence DNA and read variations directly from genes, human genetic differences had to be inferred by looking at classical genetic markers such as blood groups and variants of other proteins called polymorphisms. The frequencies of these markers were variable in different populations. This variation was easy to detect, and it gave geneticists an idea of the underlying genetic variations in different populations. Data from the classical genetic markers were collected by the first generation of anthropological geneticists from many populations across the Americas, including from the North Americans belonging to 53 tribes. By this point, although their approaches to informed consent were somewhat mixed, many of the first generations of anthropological geneticists sought consent from conducting their research from both individuals and communities as a whole. Together, their studies revealed the Native Americans had genetic variants that were unique to the Americas and widely shared across North, Central, and South America. These variants must have been present in a shared ancestral population. The studies also showed that Native American populations were genetically most similar to Siberian and East Asian groups. So the earliest studies from the genetic puzzle say that these people that were here, that have always been here, were genetically most similar to Siberian and East Asian groups. You know, the people that they call Mongoloids. Now, classical genetic markers were like the edge pieces of complicated puzzle. They allow for the rough outlines of the history of Native American peoples to be assembled, but still gave only hints about what the picture contained. Archaeological and linguistic evidence, I'm going to say that real slowly, archaeological and linguistic evidence also linked Native Americans to Northeast Asia sometime in the distant past. I had to say that real slow. Beginning in the late 1980s and early 90s, anthropological geneticists imported tools from molecular biology that filled in a few more pieces of the puzzle. So let's deal with the sequencing to order to characterize a person's mitochondrial DNA lineage or haplogroup. Before these processes were invented, researchers were able to identify what haplogroup someone belonged to in a cruder way. By digesting extracted mitochondrial and Y chromosome DNA with enzymes that cut the molecules at different spots depending on a person's DNA sequence. The resulting fragments would appear in specific patterns when run out of agarose gel. Now, this method, known as restriction fragment length polymorphism analysis, was performed on DNA samples from Native Americans across North, Central, and South American populations. Later, when more refined techniques for amplifying and directly sequencing DNA were imported from molecular biology, large sections of the puzzle began to be filled. So let's take a look at the published work that deals with the DNA. I don't really want to get into all of this because I might lose a couple of people, but I need you to know this. Here is the mitochondrial and Y lineages in the Americas. Think of maternally inherited mitochondria and paternal inherited Y chromosomes as similar to a family tree. Individual lineages are related to each other because of descent from a common ancestor, a grandparent. Geneticists classify groups of closely related lineages, families, into haplogroups. Several mitochondrial and Y chromosome haplogroups arose on the American continent that are seen only in people of Native American descent. Just as members of a family may resemble one another in physical features, lineages belonging to a single haplogroup have the same set of mutations. at a certain spots in their sequence. These are used to classify lineages into haplogroups. And just as you are not identical to your grandmother, lineages within a haplogroup may have additional variations beyond the haplogroup, defining mutations, DNA-based change over generations. Before European contact, all the indigenous peoples in the Americas could trace their mitochondrial and Y chromosome lineages inherited along maternal and paternal lines, respectively, back to several founding groups. Today, Native Americans are genetically equipped, diverse, and may carry mitochondrial and Y lineages commonly found in other parts of the world as well. Now, the founder haplogroups are direct descendants of ones present in Siberia. The founder haplogroups are direct descendants of ones present in Siberia, with additional variations that arose during the founding population's isolations and after population dispersal throughout the continents. The distribution of mitochondrial and Y lineages across the continent is not random. It reflects population history and has been used to identify events such as migrations, gene flow, or long-term continuity within a region. The so-called Pan-American mitochondrial haplogroups are A2B2, C1b, C1c, C1d, C1d1, D1, D4, H3A, are thought to have been present in the initial founding groups as they dispersed across the North and South America, D4 through H3A, found primarily along the Pacific coast of the continents, and the X2A, found only in North America, have been suggested to be markers of two migration routes, coastal and interior. Mitochondrial haplogroups present in pre-contact First Peoples include the following. South of the Arctic is A2, B2, X2A, possibly X2G, C1b, C1c, C1d, C1d1, C4c, D14, H3A. In circum-Arctic peoples, you will see A2A, A2B, D2A, D4B1, A2A1A. Those are haplogroups that I am naming in case you are lost. Now, geneticists sometimes use ABCDX. That's just as a shorthand for those haplogroups, reflecting a period of time which approaches for determining haplogroups could not distinguish between subhaplogroups like A2A and A2B. All mitochondrial lineages commonly found in populations below the Arctic Circle share common ancestors between 18,000 and 15,000 years ago. This close agreement suggests that they were all present in initial founder populations. Mitochondrial lineages within Siberian and Native American populations show that their ancestor populations became isolated from each other between 25,000 and 18,000 years ago. From this genetic diversity, one can estimate the effective female population size of the founding population to be approximately 2,000. This is not the actual population size, but rather an estimate of breeding individuals, in this case, females. The actual population size would have been larger than that, but the total is hard to estimate. Arctic lineages show a much more recent expansion consistent with the Paleo-Inuit and Neo-Inuit migrations. Y chromosome found haplogroups in Native Americans include the QM3, and then you have subhaplogroups, the QCTS1780, the C3MPB373, and potentially the CP39Z-Z30536. Other haplogroups found Native American populations like the R1b were likely the result of post-European contact admixture. So here we go. The picture that genetic data revealed was incomplete and lacking many details. but it was enough to unequivocally answer the question posed at the beginning of this chapter and confirm the growing body of archaeological and linguistic evidence showing connections with Northeast Asian populations. Many Native Americans possess mitochondrial A, B, C, D, and X, and Y chromosome haplogroups C and Q, clearly sharing common ancestry with haplogroups from Asia. I said they clearly show a common ancestor with haplogroups from Asia. These lineages also had additional genetic variations that arose after their separation from Asian lineages. Together, the mitochondrial and Y chromosome DNA from contemporary Native American populations gave a clear signal that there were the descendants of the population that had split from a larger group in Northeast Asia and then had been isolated from other peoples for many thousands of years. Ancient DNA researchers confirmed this model by finding the same lineages within an ancient Native Americans. They found no evidence for ancestry from any other source in the population. They found no evidence for ancestry for any other source in populations predating European contact. I'm going to say it again, and I can't be no more clear. Ancient DNA researchers confirmed this model by finding the same lineages within ancient Native Americans. They found no evidence for ancestry from any other source in populations predating European contact. This finding effectively refuted the long-standing, though by now fringe, theories about the ancient mound builders. It confirmed the reconstructions based on dental and some skeleton traits linking the ancestors of Native Americans to who? Ding, 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 ding. Siberian ancestors. So let's talk about the influences of Europeans on ancient North America. Along mainstream archaeological models for how people got to the Americas lie alternative ideas for their origins. These theories are bizarre, diverse, and fanciful, and encompassing everything from the notion that the first people in the Americas were ancient astronauts to the absurd idea that Smithsonian curators are secretly hiding the skeletons of giants in their vaults. I've been in these facilities and can assure you that there are no giant skeletons or hidden secrets. While the fringe theories about the past often pretend to be scientific, they don't follow scientific standards, and their theories are simply updated versions of the same mound builder myths that Europeans used to explain away the achievements of cultures of Native Americans. For example, the popular author Graham Hancock claims that the ancient lost civilizations with psychic powers was responsible for teaching Native Americans the technological skills they needed in order to create the Earth's work in North and South America. The civilizations was destroyed, according to Hancock, by meteorites during the Young Dryas period. This is largely a restatement of the ideas of Ignatius Donnelly, who attributed the Earth's work to an ancient civilization from Atlantis that was destroyed by a comet. The theme of European insertions into Native American history is unfortunately echoed in an idea that continues to be championed by a very small group of researchers. 20,000 years ago, the story goes, an ancestor of the Clovis people came from across the Atlantic, leaving behind their caves and hunting grounds to seek a new land over 4,000 miles away. These ancestors in the Upper Paleolithic people who lived in Western Europe between approximately 20,000 and 18,000 years ago made leaf-shaped spear points using overshot flaking, which allowed them to make thin, sharp blades. These blades and other cultural attributes seen at sites in France and Spain have been called the Solutrean techno-complex by archaeologists. So, according to this theory, Solutreans carried their technique from manufacturing blades across the ocean to North America during the Great Journey at the height of the Ice Age, and 5,000 years later, Clovis projectile points were manufactured using the same approach. It's easy to see why this story is popular with general non-Indigenous public. It's an extraordinary narrative of human bravery and exploration, an event of equal excitement in the initial movement of anatomically modern human Homo sapiens out of Africa, or the first venturers of the peoples about the Arctic Circle. Out of this determined the foray of Solutreans across the hostile ocean came the first people of America. It has captured the imagination of people all over the world as a testament to humanity's ingenuity and survival in the face of overwhelming odds. But it is completely untrue. The Solutrean hypothesis, as it is called today, makes the case for similarities in appearance and uses an overshot flaking for both Solutrean and Clovis points of evidence and ancestor-descendant relationships between two cultures. From this case, proponents of the theory work backward to find additional evidence connecting the two cultures and demonstrating the plausibility of transatlantic journey during the height of the Ice Age. The result makes a very compelling story, but it falls apart when you try to square it with archaeological and genetic evidence. So here you go. There's a gap of 1,000 years between the Solutreans when the Solutreans could have crossed the Atlantic, and the Clovis points to the first starts of North America. People would have had to keep making their points in exactly the same way over this period, which is extremely unlikely. We see again and again in archaeological record that human technology is dynamic, not static, and unchanging for the length of time. What's more, there haven't been any Solutrean sites found in the Americas that date to the interweaving periods between 20 and 13,000 years ago that contain Solutrean or Clovis-like points. Other sites from this period have been found, and their stone tools look nothing like Solutrean points. So there's no evidence that Solutreans used or made boats, nor do we see any other cultural connections between Solutreans and Clovis, as we would certainly expect if one was founded as a result of migration. Archaeologists find it much more plausible that Clovis people simply developed overshot flaking independently. No elaborate migration scenarios is required. But genetics has struck the definitive blow against the Solutrean hypothesis. If Clovis people were the descendants of Southwestern Europeans, we can make an easy prediction. We'd expect to see at least traces of this ancestry present in ancient Native Americans. And we don't. Whole genome sequences from ancient Native Americans, including the only known ancient individuals buried in association with Clovis artifacts, show that the descendants from an ancestral population with Siberian roots. As we are, let me continue. So we see absolutely no genetic evidence for a transatlantic migration. It is possible that people could have migrated from Europe without leaving any genetic traces. Absolutely. We know, in fact, that this did happen in 1000 CE. Norse mariners founded a settlement in Vinland where they fought, interacted, and traded with people they called the Skrillings. The Skrillings were actually pre-contact Inuit. They called the Norse and the Kavatalent. Now, archaeologists have established the Vinland was located at the Los Ox Meadow site in northern Newfoundland. At the end of the day, this Norse output left no genetic traces. No ancient Norse DNA has ever been recovered from the remains in this region, nor is there any evidence of pre-Columbian gene flow in any contemporary inhabitants. The interaction between the Kavlunian and the Inuit either were not sexual in nature or they resulted in no offspring, which is weird. Now, and this is a big but, we have utterly ambiguous evidence of Norse presence in North America from multiple lines of evidence. Different types of material culture in the archaeological record of Antsy Ox Meadows to the Norse Greenland, there is a clear occupation history at the site, and there are even oral traditions among both the Native Americans and the Norse about this meeting. The Solutrean Clovis connection rests upon a similarity in one kind of tool without any other cultural connections. and a bunch of conjectures about what could have happened. But science isn't built on could-haves and maybes. Models must be built based on evidence you have, not evidence you wish you had. The Solutrean hypothesis is lacking sufficient evidence to be considered a serious explanation for the origins of the Clovis by the vast majority of archaeologists, and I'm being bold here, literally every credible geneticist who studies Native American history. Dagger. Spears is flying, ladies and gentlemen. So, some proponents of the Solutrean hypothesis suggest haplogroup X2A, found in some ancient and contemporary Native Americans and from North America, might be a marker of European ancestry. Today's lineages of haplogroup X are found widely dispersed throughout Europe, Asia, North Africa, and North America. We can reconstruct their evolutionary relationship, much like you can reconstruct the family tree. Lineages present in the Americas was X2A, X2G, not descended from the lineages X2B, X2D, X2C, found in Europe. There's a difference. X2A, X2G are not descended from lineages found in Europe. Now, instead, they share a very ancient common ancestor from Eurasia. X2A is a comparable age to other indigenous haplogroups A, B, C, D, which would not be true if it were derived from a separate migration from Europe. Finally, the oldest lineages of X2A found in the Americas was recovered from the ancient one, also known as the Kennewick man. An ancient individual dating to about 9,000 years ago on the West Coast, not the East, as would be predicted by the Solutrean hypothesis. His entire genome has been sequenced and shows that he has no ancestry from European sources. There is no conceivable scenario under which Kennewick man could have inherited just the mitochondrial genomes for Solutreans, but the rest of his genome from Beringians. Thus, without additional evidence, there is nothing to justify just assumptions that X2A must have evolved in Europe. More assumptions. You late, man. Nine times nine. No Europeans need to be invoked as the intellectual forces behind indigenous technologies or cultural achievements. The true histories evident in genetics, oral traditions, and archaeology are exciting enough. So let's relax. But even mitochondrial and Y chromosome sequences gave only a limited glimpse of history. It took the genomic revolution to start filling in the missing pieces, and we're still only part way there. With the ability to obtain whole genomes from ancient individuals, geneticists could confirm what was already pretty certain. There was a clear ancestor-descendant relationship between the ancient peoples of the Americas and the contemporary Native American, and their line of ancestry stretched back thousands of years, eventually connecting the Paleolithic with cousin lineages stretching from present-day East Asians and Siberians. But before we can delve all the way into this story, we must first understand what the archaeological record tells us about the earliest peoples in the Americas. That's going to come up next. All right, so where we're at right now is an Asian conclusion. But what I want to do is I want to take it a step further. I want you to hear from not only the author, the doctor herself, but I want you to get this point that is being driven home here by her from the horse's mouth. So you don't think that I'm adding anything or mixing things up.
In the hearing, so we should click OK there, and certainly appreciate joining us. And I think you're set to go if you want to share your PowerPoint. Let's see. I got to end my show, I think. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Dale. Yeah, my Wikipedia is way out of date. Don't trust anything on it. You guys, thank you so much for having me out here. Well, not out here, virtually here to talk to you.
All right, side by side.
Yeah. Screen setup here. Give me a second. I've never found an elegant way to do this seamlessly. So
there it is.
We'll just do our best. There we go.
Please take a moment to mute your microphone so that we don't get feedback and such.
Yeah, please mute them.
Thanks. Yeah. All right. Well, and also, I just want to say, you guys, I know that there's, some high-profile other programs going on right now, so I appreciate time. I know we can maybe we'll find it a nice respite from the stress of the hearings, or maybe we can all go back and watch them later. I don't know. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate the chance to talk to you. I am sorry I'm not there in person. I would love to be, but that is not to be, unfortunately. So in fact, today for those of you who are wondering where I am, I'm in my office in the University of Kansas campus in Lawrence, Kansas, home of the NCAA winners, Jayhawks. We're very excited this year. But I'm actually on the traditional lands of the Kaw, who are also known as the Kanza and the Osage nations. So for those of you who are not familiar with the history of Kansas, it's an area with a long, long history of forced migrations and relocations. Many, many tribes have been forced into this area, out of this area, through this area. And of course, that has had disastrous consequences to them. And our lab group is a large group. We have multiple principal investigators, multiple PIs, and we make a conscious effort to try to not just be familiar with the history, but also to more proactively, not just end with land acknowledgements, but more proactively advocate and support the sovereignty of Indigenous tribes and communities, and to give back in the ways that we can, not just through our research, but through outreach efforts, or, for example, when we give talks, we try to donate, our honoraria, or at least parts of our honoraria, to whatever tribal organization is, there that we could potentially benefit. So happy about that if you like. There are 4 federally recognized tribes in Kansas today, and they include the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation, the Kickapoo tribe in Kansas, the Sac and Fox Nation of Missouri and Kansas and Nebraska, and the Iowa tribe in Kansas and Nebraska. And so we think that it's important to understand and acknowledge places throughout the Americas, but it's only a first step. And of course, we try to go beyond that first step. All right, so in my presentation, I want to first acknowledge the Indigenous and non-Indigenous scholars whose work has informed my thinking on these issues. And this is not all of them, but this is a sampling of the people who really influence the ways I have come to think about genetics and tribal sovereignty and working in this space. And a lot of the people whose names you see here are members of the SING organization, this is their logo, the Summer Internship for Indigenous Peoples in Genomics, which is an organization that it does a lot of things, but one of the primary missions is to advocate for ethical genomics research with Indigenous peoples, and to very specifically train Indigenous students and community members in genomics and genetics methods and ethics and in issues, and to build capacity within tribes for doing this research themselves, or at least for working with scientists like myself, outside scientists, to know, like, okay, here are some things you should think about, and here's things you might want to advocate for in designing research projects. So I am not a founding member of SING, nor am I an administrator or core faculty, but I am a participant as a faculty member as often as I can be, and I'm a huge supporter of them. And so if you know of any students or community members or any Indigenous peoples who have an interest in genomics or should know about genomics, let me make my little plug here. You know, try to get this on their radar, so that you know, I think it's just a really worthwhile organization, and it's growing and growing and growing. So just want to make a little plug for them because I think they're amazing, and I have learned so much from them. Okay, so let's get to the talk. I don't have to tell you this because you guys are all very steeped in these issues and you think about this a lot, but you know, I wanted to start somewhere. So, you know, we're all fascinated, all of us here right now are fascinated by the origins and the history of our species. And that includes the last step on our global journey, which is the peopling of the continents that today we call the Americas. And as you know from all of the talks that you've had in your discussions, that there are still many questions about this process. And I think in some ways it feels like, you know, here in 2022, we know less about this than we did 50 years ago, right? And you know, that's a good thing, I think. That's a very good thing in some ways. But these questions that we have right now are pretty basic. Who were these first peoples? Why did they travel? How did they survive the conditions of the Ice Age? How did they adapt to new lands, new environments? When did they get here? And by what routes, right? These are all pretty basic questions that we're still trying to solve. And I think that one of the reasons that we're revisiting these questions again and again is because we have a new kind of data that has been introduced within the last, you know, decade or so. And it's not just genetics data, but it's complete genomes, the genomes from all of your chromosomes. And that has really changed the story. And that has revealed so many new details and continues to reveal so many new details every year that is hard for me to keep up, let alone, you know, your average non-scientist on the street who happens to be interested in this topic. And so that's why I wrote, part of the reason why I wrote the book that I did was I wanted to, first of all, really make sure I got all of this because it is my research, but I wanted to make sure I understood the history of it. But also, I wanted to give people a framework for understanding the field and understanding the issues and understanding the history. And I wanted to do it not just, well, my assumption is that my book will be out of date within the next 6 months, right? Some new discoveries are going to be found or revealed, and you know, we're going to have to revisit our models again, or at least add new details to them. But my hope is that my book can provide a framework that people who are not scientists and not specialists in this area can use to understand where we are today. And then, you know, that will help them contextualize new information as it comes in. Okay, so let's get started into it. All right, so there are, as you know, many approaches to studying the past. And none of these approaches gives us a complete answer by itself. So there are, of course, many Native American societies that have histories of their own origins that have been transmitted mostly through ancient oral traditions for many generations. And some of these align with scientific ways of studying the past and some do not. And one of the things that I have concerns about is that a lot of my fellow scientists do not acknowledge traditional knowledge or see it as valuable. I want to say, I shouldn't say many, some scientists do not say that. I think it has become increasingly evident more and more that quite often you can find alignment between scientific perspectives on the past and traditional knowledge, that traditional knowledge can get us to places where scientific knowledge can, scientific approaches cannot. But even if they don't agree, it's still important, and it's still really important that people who work in this field are respectful and acknowledge that there are many ancient perspectives on these histories. Some of them are understood to be metaphorical. Some of them are literal explanations of origins, or are taken to be as literal explanations of origins, that peoples were always here, that they came from here. And I think that we who are not native should not dance around that or ignore it. We should be respectful and acknowledge it and position our own knowledge alongside it, not try to, create this hierarchy that has unfortunately been going on in the field a long time. I'm gonna go ahead and admit people when they get into the waiting room because I'm getting notifications. Okay, so that is one of the things that I tried to do in my book. And I want to say that, from a scientific perspective, events in the past unfolded in a particular way, but our understanding of the past is limited by the tools that we use and the data that are available. And as you know, I don't have to tell you this, archaeologists will look at the same sets of data and come up with totally different interpretations. And so it's not that different when you think about it, from having multivocal interpretations of the past. And that is certainly the case. So, and I want to say that I take a perspective where I prioritize genetics data. That is my framework for working. And it often does not agree necessarily perfectly with archaeological data, nor does it necessarily agree with traditional knowledge. These are all just different ways of looking at the past and trying to come to an understanding. And that's where we are. So I'm going to kind of focus on genetics mostly in this talk, because I think you guys know a lot more archaeology, probably more than I do. So we're gonna kind of keep our focus on genetics. Okay, so I call myself an anthropological geneticist, and that's not necessarily a household term. So I usually try and define it when I give a talk. So anthropological genetics is a subfield of biological anthropology, which used to be called physical anthropology. And anthropological genetics is a synthetic field. So it applies the methods and the theory of population genetics to evolutionary and cultural questions of anthropology. And that can be questions in the present or questions in the past. And over the last decade or so, genomics, or the study of complete genomes, not just a single gene here or there, but complete genomes, these have become increasingly common in investigating human population origins, in population histories, and biological relationships among diverse human groups. And that is because the human genome is an archive of population history. So the evolutionary forces that act on all populations, which include natural selection, genetic drift, or random changes to the composition of gene pools of populations, mutation, which is the source of new genetic variation, and gene flow, which is, mating between populations. These change the genetic composition of populations. And this evolutionary history can be reconstructed using the tools of population genetics. Ancient DNA, or DNA from deceased organisms, is an extremely valuable tool because it gives us a direct window into the past. So we know that at this time, which we use radiocarbon methods to date, right? We know that these genetic variants were present in this person at this geographic location. But beyond that, we get that window, but beyond that, it opens up a window into the past, and all of that person's ancestors who contributed to them genetically gives you then you can identify those contributions, and using population genetics you can reconstruct all of these things. So I have a direct message asking me to spotlight myself. I am not sure what that means, so I'm just going to keep on going unless somebody wants to clarify that. Okay. Trying to keep an eye on the chat as I go through here. So, all right. So in the case of the Americas, ancient DNA has helped us overturn old models, and it has yielded some really surprising insights into population histories, and we're going to get into that today. All right, I was going to skip this because I think you guys all know this, but let's just start at a baseline. So you guys all know the Clovis first story. This is what I learned in high school, or not in high school, well, in high school, but this is also what I learned at college. And in my book, I kind of talk about how I learned this story. And then literally the year or two later, I'm talking to my graduate, Frederica Casel, and she's like, oh, nobody believes that anymore. And I'm so confused. When I wrote my book, I was not going to start with Clovis first because I was like, nobody believes that anymore. Well, it turns out I'm wrong about that. There are plenty of archaeologists who still think that at least a late migration as Clovis first, not too far off from Clovis first, still think that holds true, right? A migration that, just predates Clovis, maybe 14,000 years ago, maybe a little bit earlier. There are some archaeologists who still buy into this, and I don't agree with that, but I did want to put it out there and do justice to their reasoning. And so the Clovis first model, if there's anybody here who doesn't know what I'm talking about, it's this idea that held sway in the field of archaeology for a very long time, 50 years, something like that, where that it was the Americas were peopled by a small group of big game hunter-gatherers who crossed the Bering Land Bridge very rapidly just before 13,000 years ago, and they moved down this ice-free corridor that opened up between the Cordilleran and Laurentide ice sheets, moved down there, raced down the corridor, and accounted for the sudden abrupt appearance of Clovis projectile points and Clovis toolkits that you see all across North America, almost all across North America, very rapidly around 13,000 years ago, give or take. And then a corollary to this model was that perhaps the American megafauna who went extinct at the end of the late Pleistocene were overhunted, right? This is the Clovis overkill hypothesis. So this was so entrenched. And again, it's what I learned in college. But of course, sites kept cropping up that didn't fit with this model. And so what do you do with those? For a long time, the archaeological community would dismiss them. But when a group of really eminent archaeologists went to Monteverde and they looked at the evidence and they finally mostly agreed that, yeah, this was probably a pre-Clovis site, that kind of opened the door to accepting a number of other sites, among them Paisley Cave, which also yielded genetic information, which is very interesting. And of course, that left these questions. So when did people first arrive? Well, we still don't really have a great answer to that. I'm going to give you a model, and then I'm going to argue against my model. Okay, we'll get to that. Who were they? We kind of have a better idea on that one, genetically at least. So genetics has helped us help provide answers to a number of these questions. So let's talk about the genetics. I'm just going to focus on that for a while. And I guess really quick, I don't have a slide on this, but I kind of want to give you a quick rundown of the different kinds of DNA that we look at. So the earliest researchers in the field, among them my mentor, Dennis O'Rourke, who's now my chair at the University of Kansas, they focused mostly on, in the very, very early days, they focused on looking at what we call classical genetic markers. And so these are things like blood groups or, protein polymorphisms, things that you could get fairly easily with the available tools in the 1980s. Okay. And they would compare these classical markers between populations to kind of get an overall picture of how these populations were genetically related to each other, and did that match what people were reconstructing from morphologies or not. Then the tools of molecular biology began to be imported a little bit more precise, and we were able to start looking at mitochondrial DNA, which is DNA present in the mitochondria of your cells. Mitochondria are little organelles in your cells, and there's hundreds, thousands of them in each cell, And they have their own separate genome, which reflects the evolution of the cell. It's a whole thing. You can get into that if you're curious. But their genomes are strictly maternally inherited. And that is because at conception, right, you've got the sperm coming in, you've got the egg. The sperm does not contribute anything but chromosomes, anything but that nuclear genome that we call it, the DNA that's in the nucleus, right? The egg is what provides everything else, all the organelles, which include mitochondria. And so that means that your mitochondrial genome, really small genome, it's only 16,000-ish base pairs, 60,400, whatever. It's small. But yours is exactly the same as your mother's and her mother's and her mother's and her mother's and so on, minus, you know, with addition of mutations, a few mutations, you know, over generations. It's a really useful tool to look at mitochondrial DNA because you can track the maternal histories of populations. And it gives you a good idea, using the tools of population genetics, you can create models and test models for population histories, how people are related, how populations are related. And it is very, very valuable, especially for ancient DNA, because it's so abundant relative to the nuclear genome, so abundant that you're much more likely to be able to recover it from ancient contexts. It's much easier to get than nuclear DNA. So when I started out as a grad student, that's what I was studying, mitochondrial DNA. But as I was in grad school, we were kind of going through another revolution, the genomic revolution in biology, and that quickly got ported over to the study of ancient DNA. And that was because they were now able to sequence the human genome, the whole genome, all the DNA from all your chromosomes. And that, unlike the nuclear DNA, gives you much, much higher resolution into the past. You can do much more powerful analyses. It's like, I compare it in my book to, you know, with the mitochondrial DNA, you can get the edge pieces of a puzzle and you can kind of get, you know, figure out what the picture is, probably, maybe. But with the nuclear genomes, you can get the whole puzzle. I mean, you're getting all those pieces. And so it's been extremely fascinating to watch the field develop, because in addition to better techniques for recovering ancient genomes, ancient nuclear genomes, they're also developing powerful and analytical methods for actually handling this massive amount of data to study this. Okay, so most of my talk is going to be focused on what we've learned from nuclear DNA and mostly from ancient nuclear DNA. Okay. I also want to stress, this is not my research. This has been done by many, many, many researchers in many different labs. All I did in my book was summarize all of this in, I hope, a way. So it's not stuff I'm doing. I am working in this field, but a lot of my research is not actually in this book because it's not published yet. So some of my research, but okay. So let's talk about what we have found as a field. All of the complete genomes recovered from the Americas so far have revealed that the first peoples of the Americas have two major ancestry components. One of them is from the ancient people of East Asia. The other major ancestry component was found through the sequencing of the remains of a little toddler who lived at the Malta site 25,000 years ago. Actually, I think he was there 24,000 years ago. In any case, this population was initially called the ancient North Eurasians, and then a little bit later they sequenced genomes from two young people at the Yana rhinoceros horn site dating to 31,000 years ago, which is a really remarkable site. You guys may be familiar with it. This consists of well, there's a population living year-round above the Arctic Circle 31,000 years ago. It just blows my mind. It's incredible. And this population turns out is ancestral to this population. So in a sense, they're one population. You can call them the ancient North Siberians, as we call them in this figure, or you can call them the ancient North Eurasians. Same, you know, as far as I'm concerned, same people. So what Malta's genome shows us is that, well, let me slide here. Okay, here we go. So what Malta's genome shows us is the ancient North Siberians and a group of East Eurasians had gene flow going on And this interaction ended up forming a new group that became ancestral to multiple populations. And that includes present-day East Eurasians, and it also includes the ancestors of Beringian populations, or the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Okay, so we're going to focus on this branch next. These present-day East Eurasians, by the way, are descended from the Paleo-Siberians. I'm not even going to get into that. Okay, so of course, all of this was taking place during the height of the last glacial maximum. And just to remind you, this was a period of global cooling and arid conditions reaching its peak between about 26,000 and 19,000 years ago. This is just a little cartoon that I found that shows you changes to the coastline over time. So here's modern coastline. 21,000 years ago, you have this enormous land connection, Beringia. And this was a very harsh time in which to live. It was dry. There were, the conditions were very, very difficult. And around the world, the archaeological record and the genetic record too actually show us that populations are retreating into refugia in order to survive this period. And of course, the conditions of the LGM prevented people from moving very far into the Americas. Once that massive ice sheet was formed, it blocked passage out of Alaska until the opening of it along the coast, which may have been available as early as 16,000 years ago. And then secondly, the next route would have been that interior route opening. A little controversial when that first opens, but certainly before 13,000 years ago. Okay, so this is a figure from an article I did for Scientific American last year. So during the height of the LGM, we know that much of Siberia was depopulated, and we have evidence from the genomes of the first peoples that their ancestors were completely isolated. And so this is called the Beringian pause. It was first identified with mitochondrial DNA. One of the likely candidates locations for where this may have occurred was, of course, along the southern margin of Beringia, central Beringia, because paleoenvironmental reconstructions have shown that it was a much more hospitable place to live. And we, of course, don't have strong evidence, archaeological evidence supporting that. We do have a few, potential places that maybe show some, some hints that there might be people there during the LGM, but not a lot of archaeologists are on board with these yet. My colleagues here at KU are actually about to leave to go work in bluefish caves this summer. So we're hoping that maybe we'll learn more about it. We'll see. Okay. So during the LGM and during this period of isolation, several branches emerge this ancestral population. One of them we know about from the genomes of the Upward Sun River children. I contributed to that project a little bit, and also from Trail Creek Cave. The individuals at these sites are actually part of a population from whom we have no present day descendants. We call them the ancient Beringians. And I don't think that's a great name, but that's what we call them. And they are closely related to indigenous, the other present day First Peoples. However, they don't seem to have direct descendants. And another branch that emerges during this time period, we don't know a whole lot about. We don't have genomes directly sampled from a contemporary member of that population, but they're called unsampled population A. We know about them from their contribution to the genomes of the present day Niche in Central America. So that's an interesting unsolved question as to what is going on with unsampled population A. We do not know yet. And then the third branch that emerges during this period of isolation is, and this is between 22,000 and 18,000 years ago, give or take. The third branch is one which moves south of the ice sheets and becomes ancestral to all peoples south of the ice sheets. So we see the emergence of following that movement, and it's kind of showing here, we're going to now build on that map and move south of the ice sheets. following that movement south, we see the emergence of two major genetic groupings from whom all Native Americans south of the ice sheets are descended. And this happens between about 17,500 and 14,600 years ago. The first grouping is called by geneticists Northern Native Americans, and that includes, it's abbreviated NNA, and it includes present-day Algonquians, Na Dene, Salishan, and Tsimshian speakers from Canada. And the second major grouping is called Southern Native Americans, or SNA. And that includes the 13,000-year-old Anzig child, who's the oldest known individual in the Americas, as well as Spirit Cave individual from right here, 10,700 years ago, and all present day and ancient Central American and Southern American groups from whom we have genomes. So they all belong to this branch. We don't know much about the United States, right? So a lot of times when I'm talking to non-scientists who are interested in this field, they're like, oh, Southern Native Americans, that just means people from South America and maybe Central America, right? I'm like, no, it includes, we think it includes North Americans as well. Well, we know it does because it includes these guys. But what about everybody over here? We don't know. Well, actually, I do know at least some, but I can't talk about it yet because we're not publishing our paper yet. But, you know, stay tuned for that. The reason we don't know is because a lot of tribes in the present day United States are not especially interested in working with geneticists on allowing DNA from their ancestors to be studied. And that is for very good reasons. We geneticists have not done a good job in respecting tribal sovereignty and respecting the sacredness of ancestral remains, and we haven't done a great job in building good trust relationships with tribes. And that is something that I and my colleagues, a number of colleagues at a number of institutions, are working very hard to improve. And it is working. We do have, you know, good collaborations going on, but this kind of research is very slow, at least the way I do it. And so that's why I can't talk about it yet. Sorry. But this huge gap in our understanding of genetics, genetic variation means, you know, that a lot of the models that I'm telling you today may be wrong. A lot of the dates that I'm telling you today do not account for all the genetic variation in the first peoples. And so we may see these things shift quite a bit as we add new genomes to the analyses. So this is what I'm telling you is based on the data we have today. But I want to acknowledge that we have some big gaps here. Okay, so in recent years, we, or I should say my colleagues, have been able to get genomes from dogs. And that has been really important because humans and dogs have an ancient relationship. We co-evolved as domestic partners during the Pleistocene. I mean, dogs were the first animals domesticated by humans. And, you know, I would argue they domesticated us as well. Of course, you know, this is why I put up cute pictures of cute dogs. You know, you get a cuteness response. That is exactly what dogs have done to us. So what's really interesting about American dogs is that genetic evidence has shown that they did not evolve independently from American wolves. They were domesticated in Siberia, most likely, and accompanied the first peoples as they moved into the Americas. And so therefore, it's a really important external source of data, right, to check our models with. And Angela Perry and her colleagues did a really wonderful study. And I believe that this figure was actually made, well, the original version of this figure, this is an adaptation by one of the illustrators from my publisher, but I believe the original of this figure that was published in their paper was done by David Meltzer, who's just brilliant. What it shows so nicely is how these patterns of branching between dogs and humans mirror each other so beautifully. And so what you can see here, these are all the dog genomes from Northeast Asia. These are the dog genomes from North America. Same with human genomes, right? And you can see that this is just mitochondrial DNA from dogs compared to whole genomes from humans, but I imagine sooner or later we'll get whole genomes from dogs as well. and I bet this pattern will hold up. But you can see this beautiful radiation of dog lineages that mirrors these Native Americans. Like here's ancient Beringians, here's NNA, northern Southern Native American, central Southern Native American, and southern Native American. You see this splitting and rapid dispersal happening between 14.1 and 13.9 thousand years ago. And you see this same radiation happening beginning about 15,000 years ago by dogs. That is pretty convincing to me that, you know, our models for human populations are really good because the dogs are mirroring that. So that's great. I love this study. Love it. Okay. And so, oh yeah, so this split between SNA and NNA is happening between about 17,000 and 14,600 years ago. That's what this is. And the dog genomes kind of match that. Okay. Let's see, what else did I want to say about this figure? I think that's kind of it about this figure. Okay, so, and of course, archaeologists from Mike Waters' paper a while back, not all the pre-Clovis sites by a long shot, but archaeologists are identifying sites that predate Clovis, and the timing of these sites, you know, 14,200 years ago, maybe 15,000 years ago, is, you know, quite in line with the splitting of these genomes. So we have this really neat and tidy story. Here's Paisley Caves. Give a shout out to Paisley Caves. There we go. So then we have this really nice story, right? Everything seems to be working, lining up. So keep that in mind, put a pin in that. I'm going to bring us to a mystery in genetics, and then we'll do a little bit of a recap, and then I will argue against my own model here. Okay, so I talked about these different ancestry components. Now I want to talk about a very strange, mysterious one that we don't know really what's going on there, and that is this population Y. Well, first, unsampled population A, we have this drawn as sort of vague. Okay, we don't really know a whole lot of what happened after they, you know, split off from this branch and how they got to here. Maybe there was some kind of movement, who knows? Can't answer that one yet. So that's a mystery right now. And population Y is also a mystery. So we see population Y, rather Pontus Skoglund, geneticist who originally did this work and identified this signal, sees a signal of ancestry in South Americans, originally just from the Amazonian region, but since then has been found in other South Americans, including along the coast. And this is a signal of affinity with Australasian populations, which is just, right? Why do we see this relationship between Australasians, who I don't have a map on here, and South Americans? And everybody immediately goes to, oh, there was a trans-Pacific migration, right? No, it does not. The predictions for that do not match the patterns of population Y ancestry in the Americas, in South America. The model does not fit. In addition to that, let's see if I have this slide. Yes, I do. Okay. In addition to that, I'm going to argue against a trans-Pacific migration because, go back a few slides. Sorry. Here we go. This individual, this 40,000-year-old individual from Tianwan Cave in China, has that ancestry too. So we would not expect that if it's just some Australasians migrating across the ocean, and then, you know, you would see a very different pattern. So there are two possibilities right now that we can't rule out. One of these possibilities is that this individual with this ancestry was part of a widespread population somewhere in Asia that became ancestral to the first peoples and also became ancestral to Australasians, and that this population Y ancestry got into the Beringian population and somehow, you know, filtered into the Americas. That is quite possible. Okay, so that's likely. That's kind of the one but I go back and forth. The other possibility, I go back to my slide here. Whoops. The other possibility is that there was an earlier migration, that somebody was here, that there's a population here, and they migrated very, very early and got to South America very early. And then you have the main migration of first peoples that we see in the genetics data and that as they came through, they encountered this population, had children with them, and we see the genetic legacy today. So we can't rule out either of those right now with current data. And I guess I should have taken a moment to explain this slide. This is a figure that's showing basically population relatedness. And so the darker these circles are, the more population Y ancestry they have, basically, the most closely related they are. Okay, so you can see that, you can see them in these. And then you just see kind of a scattering of it. And this is actually out of date because more individuals with population Y ancestry have been found here. Does anybody in the United States have this? We don't know. We're still working on that, trying to figure that out. We have no idea. But that's kind of important, right? I mean, that could help us get insights into this migration if we could figure this out. So stay tuned for that. All right, so let's recap because that was a lot. When did the peopling occur? This is a summary of the dates that we've estimated from genomes. And again, with the caveat that we're missing a lot of the population variation, so that these dates could change as we add in more genomes. Ancestral Native Americans diverged from Siberian and East Asian populations during the height of the LGM, at the beginning of the height of the LGM 25,000 years ago, plus or minus. Ancient Beringians and other Native American lineages split from each other during this period of isolation between about 22 to 18,000 years ago. And then we see the division into two branches, NNA and SNA, of the peoples who are south of the ice sheets between about 17,500 and 14,600 years ago. There's actually a third branch that's represented by just one genome, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Okay, so I gave you a really nice, tidy story. I like that story. Let's talk about white sands. As you know, because you had a talk about this a few weeks ago, which I was unfortunately not able to come to, these footprints have been dated at white sands. They've been dated to the height of the LGM. They've been dated to between, 21 and 23,000 years ago, something like that. Not all archaeologists buy those dates. I was at the, I was actually a discussant at the session on the White Sands site at the SAAs this year, or this year. And there were a lot of questions about it, although it was not very contentious. I was kind of prepared. I was ready that there was going to be a big fight. There was not. It was all very, very cordial. But so some archaeologists dispute this. I cannot weigh in on this at all. I am not an archaeologist. I have no expertise here. So my question is, if we have this wonderful story that the genomes show us, and it seems to agree with the majority of archaeology, but then we get this thrown at us, showing us that people are below the ice sheets. They would have had to have gotten below the ice sheets 25,000 years ago, because that's when they start forming, right? How do we interpret this given the genetic evidence? I'm really thinking about that hard, because the one thing I don't want to do is just dismiss it, right? That's not in the spirit of science. So we need to incorporate this. And again, let me point out again that Indigenous peoples in this area are like, we have been here that long. This is not a surprise to us. It's really cool, but this is not a surprise. So how do we account for this? One possibility that I like, but I'm just waving my hands here. Maybe this is population Y, right? Or some other unsampled population that we detected genetically yet. And that is very possible because of that lack of genetic sampling that we have so much in the United States. So that is the thing I'm going with right now, but it's, we don't have any evidence to test this yet. It's a testable model. I'll just leave it at that. Okay. That was a lot of talking, and we're about to the end, and I wanted to leave time for questions. So these are ways to get hold of me if you're interested. I don't really update my website very often. In fact, it's been quite a while since I've written anything, but I need to write more. My book, I go into all of this in a lot of detail. This is our lab website if you're interested in checking us out. We talk about the various projects that we've got. And these are my social medias if you want to, reach out to me there. If you're on Twitter, it's a lot easier to get a hold of me there than actually emailing me, because my email is a dumpster fire right now. I am very, very behind, as Dale can tell you. So yeah, thank you guys all for your attention, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and do some questions.
All right, so this is the foundation of the argument that needed to be had. She backs up her literature review with a few lectures that are out there in her name. A lot of people haven't been using it, and it is what it is at this juncture. We're approaching the hour and 25-minute mark of this particular video, and I don't see any questions in the actual chat, especially from people who may have opposing views. Just a little bit of conversation between people that's in the chat presently. And hopefully this adds to the conversation of what to expect moving forward. Now, we don't have to stop there to add fuel to the fire. We can go further than that and start just beating and kicking a dead horse, because what we have is scientific evidence that the people that were here first in North and South America genetically are related to Eastern Asian, Siberian related style people. Despite the efforts of other contemporary anthropologists in the earlier studies with their racism and so on and so forth, using craniums to try to argue things, moves on. So I'm gonna come back to what was mentioned before I get out of here. I could just end it right there, but I want to make it interesting. First, Clovis. There are no sites in the Americas that predate the Clovis culture. There are no sites in America that predate the Clovis culture, declared the archaeologist in front of his classroom. His tanned and deeply lined face, which attested to decades of excavations outside in the hot sun, served as a much badge of authority as the air of absolute certainty in his words. I, a young undergraduate thrilled to be taking my first advanced archaeology course, was completely convinced. I scribbled down his declarations as fast as I could, knowing that I would need to regurgitate them in a blue book exam a few weeks later. Dates from pre-Clovis layers of Metacroft, Pennsylvania, and contaminates, no Clovis age sites along the Pacific coast, Mount Verde, Western Chile, tool assemblages is commingled artifacts washed out from more recent sites upstream, all so-called evidence for pre-Clovis is poorly provenance and unreliable. Without once glancing at his notes, my professor recited the principal Clovis area sites, sites that were supposed to learn. Murray Springs, a mammoth and bison kill site in Arizona, Aubrey, an occupation site from Texas, and Zeke, the only known Clovis area burial in Montana. Unlike the alleged pre-Clovis sites, he told us, these sites were solid evidence of a culturally homogeneous group of people who must have been the first Americans. Their ancestors had come from Siberia, where they had led a rugged existence hunting mammoths and other massive ice age beasts. They lived in the small bands of extended families who ranged wildly over the lands following their prey. When the land bridge formed, they pursued the giant beast across it into new lands. Alaska was much like Siberia, as they soon ranged south enough to encounter the ice wall blocking any further progress. Did they think it was the edge of the world? If so, that belief didn't last long. Sometime near the end of the Pleistocene, between about 14 and 11,000 years ago, global temperatures had arisen enough for the ice wall to melt. A corridor began to form, slowly opening from the north to the south ends toward the middle. Once opened, animals, plants, and people were free to travel through an ice-free corridor. Humans followed swiftly on the heels of animals. Once past the southern margin of the ice sheets, they encountered new lands and new environments completely unoccupied by other people. These men quickly adapted to these new landscapes by inventing a new form of hunting weapons. Thin, elegant, and deadly, the Clovis point was exactly the right innovation needed for the successfully hunting American megafauna. The technology spread with its makers. Their populations exploded as they spread across North America. They peopled the rest of Americas in just a few hundred years. So a Clovis point. The Clovis culture was swift to rise but short-lived. Clovis points disappeared from the archaeological record about 200 years after they first appeared. The nomadic Northern American were so skilled with the lethal Clovis points that just a millennia later, all the megafauna, some 70 species, had been hunted to extinction. A lack of game demanded new ways of living, and people quickly adapted. The uniformity of the archaeological record, Clovis points as far as the eye could see, became regionally diverse, with people adjusting to local environments in unique ways. Together, the earliest hunter-gatherers who lived in the Americas from about 13 to 8,000 years ago were collectively called the Paleo-Indians, or sometimes Paleo-Americans by archaeologists. This model for Native American origins persisted for nearly 50 years, and it may not be the one that you learned in school. Some archaeologists call it the Blizzaric model, as a way to describe the amazing speed at which the people charged all the way to Siberia to South America. Some call it Clovis first, as a reflection of the prevailing sentiment among archaeological community that Clovis represented the very first people in America. It was an elegant model, most archaeologists agreed, which neatly accounted for nearly all the archaeological environmental evidence. But evidence kept appearing that didn't quite work with the model. Even as a better dating methods pinpointed the earliest appearance of Clovis people around 13,000 years ago, the Clovis first model still couldn't quite satisfy everyone. From time to time, maverick archaeologists would come forward to present a site that didn't fit the model, evidence to show people were present in the Americas before Clovis. The supposed pre-Clovis sites irritated most senior archaeologists who, like my professor, already knew how the Americas were peopled. Like annoying pebbles working their way into the shoes of a runner, the archaeologists had to keep stopping to clear away these distractions before they could make progress on their research. My generation of students was inculcated with the belief that every single site proposed to predate Clovis had one of the more fatal flaws. The attitude at the time, one of my colleagues told me, was basically, we know the answer. Don't bother us with data. So let's get into the Meadowscroft site, which is supposedly a pre-Clovis site. All right. Now, battering against the Clovis first barrier was the last thing that James Advasseo intended to do when he started the field at the 36 WH 297 site in Pennsylvania. The Meadowcroft rock shelter, located in the outcrop in the sandstone above the North Shore of Cross Creek, offered eager young archaeology students the opportunity to learn how to excavate in the complex stratigraphy of a cave environment using what were at the time state-of-the-art protocols. From successively deeper layers, Advasseo and his students recovered the remains of hearths, stone tools, and animal bones. They even found astonishingly preserved remains of basket fragments, a particularly specialty of Advasseo plated from the bark strips. They slowly worked their way back in time, 500 years, then 1,000 years, then 5,000 years into the past. The rock shelter had been a comfortable place for people to camp while they hunted white-tailed deer and collected nuts, celtis, hackberries, and Chenopodium goosefoot from the surrounding woods. It was a perfect field school project, but in the summer of 1974, it became something more. It revealed a significant crack in the Clovis first edifice and became a project that was continued into the present day. Advasio and his students had excavated strata dating to early Archaic period older than 10,000 years, unusual for rock shelters in the area, but not unknown. Below the Archaic strata was a layer of rock called breakdown by cavers from an event in which the shelter ceiling had collapsed. Below that, in layers that were ultimately dated to before Clovis, was clear evidence of human activities, including bifacially flaked spear point. As Avaseo described in his book, The First Americans, after the finding points, we immediately decamped to our favorite bar in town and polished off 10 kegs of beer. He and his students knew they had found something significant in the pretentious rock shelter. What they perhaps didn't appreciate at the time is how much of an uproar the find would ultimately cause. The layers he and his students dug, properly termed stratum ela, would go on to yield the remains of plants, animals, and lithics that were ultimately dated as old as 16,000 years ago, some 3,000 to 4,000 years earlier than known earliest dates for Clovis. Damn was Advasio's response as he stared at the report from the dating lab. He believed in the evidence. This was a paradigm-shattering find, but only if it had held up to the scrutiny of other archaeologists. And he knew the coming scrutiny would be blistering. There was nothing ambiguous about human activities associated with the stratum ea. This layer yielded dozens of stone tools, including the projectile point, small blades, unofficial choppers, and scrapers made from raw materials brought to the site from distant places. Advasio and his students had excavated the site so meticulously that even the most vocal critics of the site could not find fault with their methods or the stratigraphy. Rather, the problem was the dates themselves. They were too old, critics argued. The dates had been confirmed by multiple laboratories, including the outstanding lab of the Smithsonian, so the issue must be contamination, some, like my own professor, argued. Most likely, the contamination was from the coal seams near the site, or perhaps from a new vitrinized, fossilized pieces of wood found at the back of the cave. The coal contaminants yielded an infinite radiocarbon age, and so their inclusion would have made the dates from the lower 2/3 of stratum ea appear older than they actually were. One can read the impatience of Advasio's growing and successive response publications over the years. The nearest actual coal outcrop, he pointed out, is about a half a mile away from the site. The vitrinous wood in the rock shelter was found over 20 feet away from 2 feet above stratum ea. Contaminants could have seeped upward into the shelter via groundwater, the critics rejoined. That wasn't geologically possible, nor were traces of coal particles, which were insoluble in water, ever detected in many samples from the site, Advasio's countered. So how could this explanation possibly account for a large enough contamination event, which he estimated would have to be over 35% of the sample's total weight, to have skewed the ages by as much as he did? As why, he asked, did critics accept the dates from the site as inaccurate and thus uncontaminated, except those dating to pre-Clovis times? The critics looked at the report remains of plants and animals, whitetail, deer, oak, and hickory from the lowest 2/3 of stratum ea, and argued that they couldn't possibly date 16,000 years ago. A glacier had been right there at the time, just 50 miles or so north of the site. What was a temperament deciduous forest during so close to the glacier? Nonsense, Advasio responded. Climatic reconstruction showing that only frozen tundra would have been present alongside this glacial margin did not take into account the effects of the elevation on temperature. At 863 feet, 863 feet above sea level, the region containing the Meadowcroft site could easily have had a patchy ecosystem with deciduous trees growing even close to the glacier. On and on the argument went. It continued for decades, getting increasingly bitter and personal. It's rather uncomfortable to read the publications from this period. She cited a number of them in the endnotes for the section, so you can see for yourself. It's clear that there was a lot more at stake than just evidence. She's certainly not an archaeologist, as she stated in her presentation, so she cannot fairly evaluate either critics or the rebuttals. It's clear that the critics of such a site wholeheartedly believe that the dates are flawed, but looking back on this period from a future in which they have many candidates for pre-Clovis, it is also hard to avoid the impression that Evisio was fully vindicated. Meadowcroft was arguably a victim of Clovis's first dogma. Its discovery in the 70s predate the discovery of pre-Clovis sites, making it seem like an outlier, reinforcing doubts about it. Now, there quite a few sites are accepted as pre-Clovis, including the Cactus in Virginia, the Pazel Caves in Oregon, and Buttermilk Creek in Texas. Meadowcroft's pre-Clovis layers seem even more difficult to dismiss. A re-examination and additional dates with more refined methods of today would probably yield more information and more confidence in the results of the site. But Advasio is adamant that he's done enough. The evidence he gathered should speak for itself. You heard her talk a little bit about the Clovis site in the previous bill, but she did not elaborate, as she was just only presenting an argument in front of people. However, we are where we are today. So she continues that she learned in class that during the 80s, linguistic evidence, morphological evidence, and very early genetic evidence were integrated into a traditional model, producing an extremely popular synthesis called the three-wave migration hypothesis. This model divided all Native Americans into three groups based on language grouping. You have the Ameridid, the Nai-Dene, and the Inut-Aleut, each of which entered the Americas separately and sequentially. It was the so-called Amerindians who were descended from the Clovis peoples, with the other groups entering later. A few years after taking the class, now a newly accepted graduate student, she found out how wrong her professor had been. It started with a conversation with her graduate advisor, Frederica Castle, when she casually mentioned that most geneticists didn't buy the Clovis first model at all. Mitochondrial haplogroups coalesced much earlier than 13,000 years ago. Anyway, there are plenty of sites in the Americas that predate Clovis. Look at the Mount Verde and Meadowcroft. She said nothing, not wanting to portray how confused she was. From Castle, she learned that by the time she was in high school in the late 90s, geneticists had almost unanimously rejected the Clovis first hypothesis. By sequencing mitochondrial and Y chromosome lineages in contemporary indigenous populations, geneticists had identified what they termed as foundings lineages, those which had been present in the populations ancestral to all indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere. After they entered the Americas, the molecular clock was set for these ancestor lineages. As mitochondrial genomes were passed from generation to generation along the female line of the Y chromosome along with the male line, sometimes one of their DNA bases would spontaneously change from A to a G or from a C to a T. The changed DNA base, sometimes called a mutation or variant, could get passed down as well. Over time, as a population expanded and people moved across the continent, these lineages added mutations and diversified, expanding outward like a tree branch. During the 90s, geneticists spent a lot of time examining the branching patterns of different mitochondrial trees, which they called haplogroups, and working backwards using the molecular clock to determine the date at which all these lineages shared a common ancestor, the trunk of the tree. In geneticist speak, we call this point in time with two lineages joins up in their common ancestor, the coalescent event. And it is a very powerful tool for understanding many aspects of genetics histories in all organisms. So here you go. It isn't quite so simple. Many assumptions go into correlating and consolidating events and actual dates. Geneticists must operate under the assumption that the molecular clock ticks or accumulates mutations randomly at a constant rate. Many papers have been written about whether this is an accurate assumption and what is the actual rate. Depending on accepted rate, the coalences of all mitochondrial haplogroups found in the first peoples in America was estimated between 20,000 and 15,000 years ago, between 30,000 and 20,000 years ago. Neither of these was compatible with the Clovis first model or initial people in around 13,000-ish years ago. As a geneticist, we're working on calculating the dates and arguing whether the Americas was populated in a single migration or several. Archaeologists was turning more and more convincing evidence of humans' presence in the Americas before Clovis. I wanted to kind of run that down to y'all real quick. Then there was another paper published, The Rise and Fall of Three-Wave Migration Hypothesis. You would hear people show up, as you can see on the screen, like Joseph Greenberg and Christy Turner and Steven Zagura, all anthropologists, geneticists, and linguists who would push that through. But furthermore, foremost among the pre-Clovis candidates was the site of Mount Verde in Chile. In the 70s, archaeologist Del Hay began an excavated site of the bones of the Goatmospheres, extinct elephant-like creatures, began turning up with what appeared to be cut marks on them. What he and his excavation team found was beyond anything they could have ever imagined. Because it had been buried under a pit dome, Mount Verde had an almost miraculous preserved set of organic and non-organic objects. Ropes with knots still tied in them, the remains of wooden frame huts, remnants of meals, including wild potatoes, mammoth remains with the soft tissue still preserved, the remains of the medicinal plants, and perhaps most pointedly of all, the impression of the young person's footprints left in a layer of mud and clay at 14,000 years ago. Mount Verde's archaeology predated the earliest date of the appearance of Clovis in North America by over 1,000 years. Mount Verde was dismissed by archaeologists for its incompatibility with the Clovis first model dates. For the first fact that stone artifacts that were found there were nothing like the Clovis site or the Clovis points, and mostly for its overall strangeness. But Delhay persisted. In 1997, a group of eminent archaeologists traveled to the site, evaluate whether it's indeed legitimate archaeological site, and to determine if the radiocarbon dates of the strata were accurate. After visiting the University of Kentucky to view the materials that Delhay excavated, the entire group traveled to the site to evaluate the stratigraphy. It was by all reports a rather tense and contentious visit. But at the end, archaeologist David Meltzer put the question to a vote. Was Mount Verde a legitimate pre-Clovis occupation site? The experts said yes. Once Mount Verde broke the Clovis barrier, archaeologists began to rethink how the people of the Americas might have occurred. They took another look at the known pre-Clovis sites and began to recognize new ones, including Paisley Caves, 14,000 years ago in Oregon, Page Layton, 14,000 years ago in Florida, Manus Maston Kill site in Washington, 14,000 years, Hacaprita in Peru, 14,000 years, Buttermilk Creek Complex in Texas, 15,000 years, Schaefer and Heber sites in Wisconsin, 14,000 years, Cactus Hill site in Virginia, 16 and 15,000 years, Cooper's Ferry site in Idaho, 16,000 years. And then a site in Venezuela called Tami, 14,000 years. Each site had its critics and some are severe. However, despite the archaeology professors insisted to contrary, one can say broadly that the totality of the archaeological evidence indicates that humans were in the Americas by, at the most conservative estimation, 15 to 14,000 years ago, most likely between 17,000 and 16,000 years, and perhaps even as early as 30 to 20,000 years ago. if you accept the evidence from the sites in Central and South America. Yeah, man. So I really want to stop right there because I don't want to bore y'all half to death with all this data and making it seem like I'm just beating a dead horse. We can talk the routes, but we're following the evidence. And then following the evidence, you're going to come to an honest conclusion. Is going to bring you right back to what we said earlier on. The evidence is just going to continue to support it. And this is what I mean by people are not looking at all the evidence. And this is what I mean by people making the claim that they've been here before. Well, what is the supporting data that you have that would substantiate that? Why are you using that argument? My grandmama said, my mama said, my auntie said, my neighbor said, my cousin said, my brother said, and none of you have evidence for or a story to substantiate why was it said. So hopefully from the Kofi Pasai research team, y'all have had the privilege of being able to, look at the conversations that I've had with Sister Denise regarding oral history, oral tradition, right? And oral family history. Because ultimately that also goes into, if they don't want to use DNA, if they want to run away from DNA, and they want to base the premise of their arguments on quote unquote genealogy. Well, genealogy requires evidence to substantiate it as well. And we talked about those things in those bills and be able to extract those. So it goes back to the point. Now, what I've lined up in this particular bill is the earliest evidence for Native Americans and where they actually come from. People who said they were always here, they weren't here. You couldn't have been here. You had no way of living back when them ice clips was there. You saw the doctor when she pulled up her screen and showed the glacier period where the ice was from northern Canada through North America, from one coast to another. You couldn't move. It was an ice wall. There was no way for you to be able to do that and survive because you couldn't even get water. You couldn't even fish. What was you eating? You was trying to hunt game? With what tools? If you didn't already have the tools, how could you get wood to make fire? Did you bring it with you? And once that burned out, where did you go to get extra wood? You see what I'm saying? There's so many questions. Like, it's an illogical argument to sit here and hinge it upon what my grandmother said. Okay, your grandmama said, and now can you show me evidence for it? Because your grandmama told you that, a whole bunch of religious rhetoric. You believe that too? And if you do, hey, that goes to show why you're in the predicament that you're in. But we have to stop accepting my grandmama said, or my auntie said, or my great grandmama said that we always been here. How, Sway? You just as black as me. If you're not, you light skinned like I'm light skinned. Or you brown skinned like, other people are brown skinned, or dark skinned like other people are dark skinned. Genetically speaking, you're over 70% African American. Why would you deny that? Just because you're, some people in your family a while back migrated to these places and spots where these Indians were, and even married Indian women, or even had sex with them and had children, or the men, vice versa. That don't mean anything about that one person on that one side that had to have that scenario happen, to had the opportunity to have sex with a woman, or a woman to have sex with a man. And if you're hinging all of that on anything, then that is proof positive that, hey, those two people on the opposite spectrums of either being the man or the woman had to encounter someone who was already here before they had had the sexual relationship, meaning those particular people are not from this particular place. So miss me with all of the forgery, the misrepresentation of history, the anti-African rhetoric, the anti-denial of your true ancestry. Miss me with that. Because you don't have the evidence to support anything going on in any of these arguments, and we've let it drag out. We're letting it drag out. Desmond Gamble says he's a real Native American. Well, at least have it. And that's the thing. That's the problem. You know, when it's time to provide the evidence, there's issue. So now I intentionally did the things the way that I did them so that we would have these particular recent videos to put together to properly understand the argument in its totality. We all know that the people that were here before Europeans, before our black asses got here, were East Asian and Siberians. We know that. Those people's ancestry developed from those particular areas. And when they migrated in, they began to mutate and adapt to a new climate. And then you get these other sublineages that would sprout up after that. That is why earlier on, when we talked about the haplogroups, it was significant for people to understand the A, B, C, and D, and then the X2A. And then it is what it is at that point. So go tell your grandmama she lied to you, like she lied to you about Christianity and Jesus Christ walking on water and he's the Lord and Savior. Just accept it. It was all she had at the time. Understand the true meaning of why people would even say they had Indian in their family. A lot of those people were trying to claim that to be good hair. A lot of the other people were trying to claim it to run away from slavery because they were runaways that were trying to assimilate among the Indians so that they can hide out there and build a life for themselves without slavery. You just have to understand that. And if you don't understand that, then that's unfortunate. Let me see what else I got for y'all, man, before I shut it down, man. Imagine living in eastern Beringia during the Pleistocene. You and your this is my point here. This is my point here, man. Do y'all really know what's going on in the world? But you sitting here, you trying to claim that you was already here, bro. How, Sway? How, Sway? If you was already here, you died, bro. You couldn't have survived. Imagine living in eastern Beringia during the Pleistocene. You and your band, a group of several extended families, follow the way of life your ancestors did for many generations. It is summer, and you may make your home close to the river, where you can hunt waterfowl and fish and feast on berries and other delicious plants that grow in the valley. The hunters in your family spend their day stockpiling precious stone from nearby outcroppings, knowing it will be much harder to find good tool stone at your winter home. Many weeks travel from here. Later afternoon around the camps are punctuated by a sharp report of rocks striking each other as the hunters and the children who imitate them shape the rocks they've collected into lighter, more portable forms that they can use later in the year to quickly replace the tiny blades of knives and spears. One of the hunters is taking time off to recover from childbirth. A young teenager who has gotten good at making tools has been selected to replace her in the essential skills. I want to pause right there because this was someone's livelihood. This is a story. They're telling us something. But when we ask you Aboriginals or you Indigenous, Native American wannabe black folk about your story, we don't get any of this. You can't even show us that you know how to make stone tools. This is something that it gets passed down. You don't even go fishing or farming, but you're gonna tell me that you've been here. So why would you just dismiss all the cultural nuances of what makes you you to be something that does not make you still someone else in someone else's eyes? What about the song and dance, the rites of passages, the deities, the staple foods, the art? Where is all of that? There's so many questions that are left unanswered when you're having conversation with so-called wannabe Aboriginals and Native Americans, Indigenous folk that are of African American descent, or black people, or Negro, since they play the word games and say, we were this, we were that. Somebody laughing at me saying, if you was already here, you died. It's a fact. Let me show you why I said if you was already here, you died. Let me see if I can pull up something. Let me see if it'll show a video. So this is an example, right? Nah, that's how the earth was made. Let me see if this will help me out. Here you go. This is a good video.
His final prediction.
This is a good video right here. Watch this. Watch this right here. That's the longest 15 seconds ever. Look at this. Hold up. The video, I'm gonna turn the sound off. The video is only 1 minute and 10 seconds. Look at the date, 24,100 BCE, the Pleistocene area. Here's the Beringia right here, right? What we're calling Alaska and all that, right? Yada, yada, yada. We get it, you know, over here, right? Look at this ice cap. Look at this ice sheet. It goes from coast to coast, covering damn near the whole continent. There's a little small piece up there that it ain't covering of Canada. This mug comes all the way down. This is Florida, ladies and gentlemen. Florida right here, Texas right here. Y'all should know that. California right here. You can't even get into here because you got all this ice right here. This is Chicago. This is the Midwest, what you want to call the Midwest. So you got Chicago, Ohio, right? Coming down into Kentucky, right? The Illinois, Ohio, Minnesota, you know what I'm saying? You got all of this covered right here. It's coming down as far as, excuse me, Southern Illinois to a degree. This is an ice sheet. You coming through this area and then you hit an ice wall. So if you was here and had always been here, ladies and gentlemen, and all this little green pasture right here near the equator, if you've been here in all of these areas, if you've been here, how the hell did you get here? What'd you do, pop up out of the ground? Because no one could come beyond this period here. Look at it as it gradually look. As the date changes, the date is at the right-hand corner. Let me start it over for the slow people. All right, this is 25,000 BCE era. Early man is moving around the world as we speak. But this ice cap is rescinding slowly. Watch Minnesota start revealing itself. The Great Lakes start revealing itself. Look. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Look. There go your entry point. Coming through right here. Boom. Hold up. Ooh. Let me go back. 15,000 years. Oh, let me go back. Okay. Here come your entry point. Or here come your entry point. Down this coastline. Or this way right here. We got evidence down this coastline and through here. There's an ice sheet right here that is preventing people on each side, but watch as you go. Watch over here. I need y'all to watch over here in this area. Boom. Still an ice sheet right here, but you can come down the coastline to avoid the ice sheet, or you can come through here to avoid it. Look at the Great Lakes. Clear, baby. Look at the date. We're populating. People are populating now since this ice cap is rescinding. And as it continues to rescind, more people are beginning to come across. They ain't got to go backwards now. They had a bridge up here. Look at the bridge. Look, the bridge is no more. Around 11,000 years, the bridge is no more. Let me bring it back a little bit. There's a little gap right here at 11.4. Watch this gap between here change the game. Look, Plano cultures, desert archaic, early basket makers, eastern fluted point hunters, glacial cane, Aquano Plano, Paleoarctic tradition. Look at that. Oh, more stuff started to populate. San Diego, Chihuahua traditions, Mexican archaic, Cuchusi, Ushira, right? More stuff begins to come up. Old Copper Age, Northern Archaic, Arctic cultures. Watson's Break. Maritime Archaic, the northeastern United States and Canada area. And that's the video. So when I say, if you claim to always been here, your ass died. You died. There was no way that you would find anything that you could have survived on outside of eating each other. But how would you live on that ice? I just want to know. So I need y'all to, if you serious about the subject matter, man, go back and review all the bills from the previous days. There's enough information provided. There's sources in the descriptions of those videos. There's a lot of sources in the description of this particular video that will help you begin to put pieces together for yourself to come to your own conclusion. I am not trying to draw a conclusion for you. And it just is what it is. So I don't get into the whole Aboriginal thing. So when we start getting into OMAC stuff, y'all black asses wasn't around there to be dealing with having no influence on no OMACs. And to say that you were is hideously ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So I don't even know why y'all would do that to yourselves. Straight like that. What if they talk about South America? Are those not Native American? Yes. Yes. Those people in North and South America are Native Americans of what we know. Those people have East Asian and Siberian lineages genetically. And we talked about that earlier in the bill. So you might have been late. You know what I'm saying? You might have been at the all-girls school celebrating Thanksgiving with your Aboriginal friends. And it is what it is at that point. But people just have to stop being ignorant of the information. Listen, man, I know y'all don't like me, bro. I get that. A lot of y'all don't like me. So when I say something right, when I say something, y'all get mad. Or when I'm talking to Denise, y'all get mad. And you want to argue against it because of your dislikes toward me. But y'all really don't know how stupid y'all sound and look, because in secrecy, I know y'all agree with me. But in public, you got to be content with me, because you got to act like you don't agree with me, because you're emotionally invested in trying to hate on me because you don't like what I'm doing or saying or the way I convey it. This fool says she from a celebrity tribe. You don't get that pseudo-ish out of here? Only black Cherokee I know is on Pornhub. Facts. The one with the big booty. Factamundo. Only Cherokee I know. That thing be rough. Says like the tribe. Yeah. Yep. Celestial tribe is the tribe of pseudo. That's facts. Fact, big fact. Look at Keenan rolling up laughing. So do this, man. Before we get out of here, man. There's some people in here just tapped in, tuned in, listening in, and all of that. At the end of the day, this information that is being brought forth to you is more updated and accurate information, not from the past. And this allows you to dispel myths about the old Meg stuff and all of that as well. Dang. So look, man, waiting on it. I mean, if someone else feels different and feel like what's being said is not accurate, or they take issue with whatever, you know what I mean? Bust your move. Bust your move. When I agree, I actually agree until I'm proven wrong. I'm not coming up there. I got beat on. Oh, at least you. Hey, look at this honesty. This is honest right here. I'm not coming up there. I got beat on for 2 days. Yep. You got scholastically. How do I want to say this properly without being disrespectful to you? You took a scholastic ass whooping. No, you took a scholastic educational moment. Two things can be true at the same time, Desmond. They go with Cherokee because it's popular and because those people was enslaving African Americans, and you know what I'm saying? Two things can be true. And absolutely, they were not the only tribe that enslaved black people. So in this instance, two things can be true here. Well, two things we know is true here. She says, nope, I'm not here for your entertainment. Hey, I ain't entertained by your ignorance. I'm entertained by the educational process, the process that allow you to be able to overcome the ignorance of others in the moment, or the educational process that allow you to come to an honest conclusion and see the error in your ignorances and allow you to be a more, you know, astute learner. By the way, Kofi did a presentation years ago on the civilized 5 tribes, on the so-called 5 civilized tribes. And he goes into depth. He goes in depth in his presentation in those regards to weed out some of the ignorances from the Choctaw, Chickasaw Creek, and yada yada yada. Oh, okay, Desmond. Cool. No problem. I was just saying two things can be true. And black people wasn't even hollering about Blackfoot until people on this side of the argument start bringing up Blackfoot just to keep it above. Kofi usually break down Thanksgiving. He must be eating turkey this year. Yeah, probably. Blackfoot is the most popular get out of African jail tribe. So don't nobody have any contention. You know, we had a brother that had contention with. You know what? Denise, do you mind coming on the panel and so we can close this out? Do you mind coming on the panel and talk about the educational process that you've been having in your chat and how that process was going? Do you want to talk about that? Do you want to shed light on how people didn't understand what it was until whatever? Or do you want to educate? Do you want to, allow people to understand what transpired in your chat today? She says, I am already an astute learner. Otherwise, I would get up there and sound like them crazy people. Okay, now the people crazy. Remember earlier you was trying to protect them until I started hitting you with the each 99. Most people claim Aboriginal can't name more than the 5 civil. That's a fact. And even if they can name these other tribes now, it's really, you know what I'm saying, it's really pseudo judo. A scrap. Y'all crazy. So what the business is? Oh, there she go. Uh-oh, hold up. Hold on, from the edge. My bad.
I'm gonna change my name.
What's going on?
You add me though. That's not.
What the business is?
Can't change my name and then add me.
We can't hear you. You're on mute.
I wonder why.
There you go. We hear you now.
Oh, how you gonna change my name and then add me?
I had to edit your name first before you came on the show.
That's not.
That's actually accurate.
The name is not set in stone. Oh, tell you. What? Yes, Sean.
All right, so do you mind talking about your what?
Because you're gonna ask me what about what I learned.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the breakthroughs that you had in your chat today. I think that's significant. Do you mind discussing that?
Sure. You learned about oral history, and oral traditions, and what it actually is. That is like, it's the stories that are passed down generation to generation, and the traditions and cultures passed down,
We
not
really can't
just.
hear you. It's almost as if you're scared to have to tell
I'm
us.
not scared to tell you. Okay, fine. So we learned that what oral history is and oral traditions are, and that they deal with the stories that are passed down generation to generation, the traditions and culture, and not not just, well, this was told, I was told that, somebody in my family had this background. Like, you have to have something that solidifies it, a story or an event or something that happened that you can tell, that people can go back to and kind of try to, I guess you could say, substantiate with different things.
Okay. So there was a breakthrough in your chat with people who seem to have taken issue what was initially argued or conversed between you and I in a recent dialogue.
Yes.
All right.
Because
Go ahead.
they thought that, that you saying that, my mama said, they felt like that could count as a family history, but it doesn't go with the definitions of oral history.
Okay. All right. Now, is this a consensus in your chat where everybody now is on the same page, or did the brother that actually ended up on the show earlier, who seemed to have taken a personal issue with me and never understood the argument, is he still on the fence, or what's going on with that?
He still does not want to have an understanding. He does understand it, but he still thinks that it should be allowed. Although he does agree with what you said, he still feels like the latter should be allowed. That if your grandmother said so, and that stuff should be allowed. But the rest of my chat agrees with the what you said after conversing about it.
So what does he want allowed?
That if his mama said it happened, then it's the truth.
How could that be considered here?
I don't know. I know that it doesn't make any sense. But I think that it would be more so just because of an appeal to an emotion. Kind of, you don't want to say that they're wrong, or that you need more information when it's your mama or your grandmama or whatever. But
confirmation
when it comes to that, you need to, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very fallacious, huh?
Yeah.
And he seems very fallacious. And everything that he do, he is super fallacious.
Yeah, he was.
Because how could you sit here and say that, okay, you agree in principle, but you still feel like if your mama says something that just because my mama said it, it could be held as evidence. How, Sway? How, Sway?
I mean, because it's because it's his mama. It's their mother.
Who
I
gives a
didn't
damn?
understand the like why. I didn't understand why yet, but at first, but I think it's just because when people say, okay, well, they have Native American, then they start to try to assimilate into that and bring it on to them, then you know what I'm saying? And then it starts to be near and dear to them because they want to take it on.
Mm.
So then to tell them that it's not, I mean, you got a whole lot of people with the Egypt stuff too. Anything, any kind of history will tell us that we're not Egyptians, but people still want to take on that culture as well. So, yeah.
I mean, I could deal with that though. I don't. Basically, what I'm standing on and what I'm presenting to people crosses every line. I don't give a damn if you faking like you're an Egyptian and all this other shit. It, excuse me for cussing, but it is what it is. Like, just
Okay, so that's the same thing they do with the Native American culture. Native Americans, I mean, just like Egyptians, like you mentioned the Olmecs earlier, and Aztecs, like when people are talking about all these different people and their backgrounds, and it's extensive, it's, you know, they had a lot of technological advances to people, you know, and everything else. So somebody would want to be a part of that. So if somebody tell them, oh yeah, you got such and such in your line, you know, they take that on and want to. So for you to say, well, that's not enough evidence to say that. It kind of pulls
you
their
talking about the
emotional.
DNA and Ramesses, correct?
Well, yeah, but it just pulls at their heartstrings.
Yeah, but it's just saying you have a distant common ancestor with the person. It's not
Okay, same thing.
that is something other than that. And people don't understand that. People have a distant common ancestor with a banana. Did you know that?
Yes, I do know that.
Oh shit.
Well, they say we have a distant common ancestor with like almost everything. So I
Yeah.
understand that.
A vegetable. There's a percentage difference between you and a vegetable. So this is
Yeah,
something that people have to look at the totality. But there's you would have to provide me evidence of my mama said. She ain't say all she did was say she ain't told no story. She ain't provide nothing else. Where is the data to substantiate what mama says? And I truly believe that, you know, I'm saying this, I truly believe people don't want the truth. They can't accept the truth. It is unbearing and tough to deal with.
yes.
And you have the most pseudo chat.
Okay.
All y'all have
Okay.
never listened to that.
Is anybody okay? Did nobody ask you? I'm talking about my people in my chat.
Here we go. It's a clear saver.
I'm not saving nobody. I taught them everything that was taught to me today.
It's a should I save her? Yeah, Captain Saber Pseudo. Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. What's that woman name? Captain Saber Pseudo.
We know what oral history is. Thank you. And oral traditions.
Yeah, if y'all listen long enough, man, I'm gonna have all y'all educated properly. I can't believe it. So let me ask you this: Who else besides the dude that just didn't want to agree? Who else took issue with what I was saying and then later on agreed? Is there anyone else in particular that we can? I'm just curious.
Why are you trying to get me to pull my people out here?
I ain't trying to get you to put your. I'm not trying to get you to put your people nowhere. I'm asking for clarity You know what I'm saying? Because I want to know if there was really other people that was trying to seriously argue against me, and then only to turn around and be like, "Oh, okay, I agree with him."
Yeah, a few people.
Few people, huh? Who are those people? Male, female?
Males. I mean, the females they didn't really get it at first because they came in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But once I explained it, kind of it was okay. Somebody in there from a different research team who also I don't know whether he didn't understand at first or what, but he was.
Oh, so it's a he now, specific.
Yeah, he didn't. He was going against it at first, but then he agreed. In the end.
Oh, okay. So he don't want no smoke, right?
No.
Oh,
Well, he came out on that because he agreed.
He what?
He came on that because he agreed with you.
He ended up agreeing with me, huh?
Yes.
Oh, okay. But
Or should I
initially,
say agreeing with the evidence brought forth?
okay, so you want to say agreeing with the evidence brought forth because you know, if you agree with the evidence brought forth, who brought forth the evidence?
You did.
Oh, okay. So he agreed with me and the evidence.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So he really just had a personal issue.
Perhaps. I don't
That's
know.
what it
I don't
sounds like.
know y'all personal issues. I know y'all personal
It
stuff.
sounded like he had a personal issue. You know, because
Right.
some people just really some people just
we could know this, but you ran out of my chat. So there's that.
He really, he a hater.
Whatever. You ran out the chat. So I don't know if it's a personal
removed
issue.
myself from being the smart room.
Yeah.
I removed my listen.
You
I took advice from
your friend.
I took advice from someone who used to say this all the time. If you're the smartest person in the room, you need to get the hell out of the room. And I'm starting to believe that person who once used to say that all the time, I don't know their position today, but from what I'm hearing, it sounds like it's been some removing of the rooming going on.
That's what you want to call it.
And I'm gonna leave that at that.
I can say that anyway.
And so we have a question in the chat for you.
I saw the question.
We have a question in the chat for you. Do you mind educating us of sharing who this person was that initially had an issue? Was it this person? You can say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. All righty. So there we got an answer to our research question.
You got issues. Y'all was crazy. You come have my chat. You're gonna have me up here arguing with them again.
Yeah, man. Yeah, he flirting with you.
Yeah, he got issues.
Yeah, he flirting with you right now. I don't want to get involved in all of that, bro.
The point is that my name is not Captain Savasudo. I am here to represent the normal people in the world who aren't researchers.
Hold up. You think people in the chat ain't normal?
No, they research stuff and they watch y'all and y'all research stuff. So they're gonna have a different perspective.
So you saying so it's our fault that the normal who you calling the normal people?
I didn't say it's your fault.
That's what you just said. So it's our fault that these mofos is stupid that you calling the normal people because they don't watch our stuff and they don't research and they don't do what we do over here on this side.
Yes, that's called normal people. Like normal people. The reason why researchers are researchers is because y'all go above and beyond. Y'all do other stuff.
Because normal people go research something before they go regurgitate.
That is not normal. That's not normal. That's normal to you. That's normal to smart people. They want to know something. They go read about it. They go find out information. But like average people don't do that. They just listen to so and so. He said, Mama said, and all of that. They don't go an extra step to research and do every other things. But because you do, and the people around you do, you think it's normal, and it's not. So you think the information you have is normal
I don't
too.
think what I do is normal because most people are so surface level researchers. And I understand that, meaning that they're not going to go beyond the surface to substantiate what it is that they are parroting and regurgitating.
Right. But I mean, I've argued with these people a lot, you know what I'm saying? And that's what I do. Like you say, I save them, but I
You do?
I just try to bring them to
No, you
a
don't.
point of knowing a little bit better. No, I don't.
Listen,
I just say it nicer than you.
The sooner you accept the truth, the better.
I don't save people. I mean, because I don't sit here. Or if you can prove me wrong or something, or bring information contrary, I can accept that. And then I could just put it in a way that would, you know, better fit people who don't read like that or who don't
What could you say
comprehend.
differently than me saying it in a common sense way? I use you as an example to draw the easiest way to get them to understand the subject matter.
I know, but like you said, some people don't like you. You have a harsh way of saying things sometimes.
A
That you
harsh
expect
way
people.
of saying things when I ask you to read.
Yeah. No, I'm saying when you expect for somebody to understand. I could read and
No,
just comprehend
because
when
I
I
was more
read.
concerned with the chat when you were sitting there saying that you get it. I kept referring back to the chat. I said, you have to remember we have people in the chat who may not.
I understand.
Yeah, so you can't say what you just said when I was more
I
concerned.
can't say it because Sean, you really don't.
I was concerned about the regular people.
The regular.
As
Okay.
you call it.
Yes,
the people who don't research.
because when I
People who
bring
believe
forth
everything they
something,
want to.
like the stuff that I hear,
I
the
was
stuff I hear in my
concerned
pseudo
about,
chat,
hey,
that's
listen,
what I bring to you.
I was
The stuff I
concerned.
hear.
I was concerned about the people who was worried about what their grandmama said. Period.
I understand that.
And I kept telling you, hold on, we can't leave or miss this. All that. All that, homie.
Okay.
Now, do you have an issue with what I presented today?
No.
You have no issues with the origins of Native Americans?
No.
So do you believe that people in your chat think that they have always been here?
Kind of. So it's not always been here, like they didn't migrate from somewhere. A lot of them will try to say that that basically they were enslaved here and that it wasn't like they didn't just bring millions of Africans over here, that it was people already here and that the people here share, you know.
Hold on, time out. Slow it down for me and run it back so that I can understand properly what you're attesting.
Because it's like, it's not that they've always been here. It's clear that they migrated here, right? But that I think they feel like they overinflate the amount of Africans that came over, and that they really just enslaved the people who were already here. So most of us are not.
So how the people
mainly
that got
Africa.
enslaved? So how the people that got enslaved here? How did they get here to become inclusive with the Africans that were enslaved?
What do you mean? You said how did they what?
Okay, so basically what you just said was that they feel like that people was already here and ended up being enslaved along with the Africans. So the Africans and them people are two different groups of people. They're not the same. So they genetically they should have two different haplogroups. because they come from
Yeah.
different lineages.
Well, kind of.
That was already here was already here. The Africans that were brought over here and assimilated into the slavery conditions are different.
Different people. Yeah. So that would make sense, right? But that's not
could that
what
make
they
sense?
be saying. I'm saying it would make sense if they're two different people, but that's not. I don't think that that's what they're saying. But I don't have the whole thing down because I don't believe that it's true. So I would have to get one of them to come up here and talk to you. I tried to get somebody to come talk to you so that they can explain their belief system.
So now they want to explain their belief system. So here
Well,
we go.
I would like for them to explain it to you because, like the way you said, like they've just always been here as if they didn't migrate. That's not because they deal with like DNA and stuff. They know that it was a migration, and they know that people came out of Asia over here. Like that's accepted, right? It is after that it becomes skewed as far as why they don't think that they're actually African American or African descent.
Okay, well then
because they feel like something.
All right, so no, stop. So if they feel like that they're not African descent, right? They don't feel like they descend from Africans. Who do they descend from? Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yes. The Native Americans, because you got to remember that it was some kind of.
Slow down. Listen, you have to understand when I ask you a question, you just can't blow, you just can't and then just go running. You have to deal with what I'm asking. If they don't descend from Africans and they were enslaved, then who do they descend from? You can't say we don't descend from Africans. We just was enslaved too. Well, what evidence do you have that would prove that you descend from a different lineage or group of people? Because we have DNA, we have history, we have oral history, and we have traditions. What are you going to provide that would substantiate that you're different? Phenotypically, you are just the same as me. So that's phenotypically, right? So genetically, how do you differentiate from me? Or culturally, how do you differentiate from me?
Right. I understand that. That's what I'm saying, that one of them has to come explain it to you.
Shit, they can't explain it. How they
going to explain how they view it. Well, they do have evidence. It's just you're gonna
evidence.
The evidence that they have.
What evidence they got? What evidence they got?
The evidence that they have.
No,
I just don't know if you will accept it.
Don't play with me. What evidence do they have?
Like the same kind of thing. The haplogroups, they use those.
Okay, so they took a DNA test?
Yes.
And what does their DNA say?
I don't know.
Have they shown you their DNA?
No, not one of them. So
right.
the other one did.
So how could they use haplogroups if they didn't show you the DNA?
And then they also use blood types, which I know blood types are crazy, but
can you please come on with blood types?
I'm telling you, they do.
Okay, can you go get them to come on the show real quick? Can you go get them to come on the show real quick?
Oh my God.
We got time today. Hell yeah, they misusing haplogroups, bro. They're making a fringe argument based on unsolicited data that they don't have to support their position. If you feel like you descend from a different group of people that are unrelated to Africans that were enslaved and on those plantations, you're full of shit.
Use haplogroups too.
You can't. How? You cannot use haplogroups and not have the genetic evidence. Listen to me very closely. A, B, C, D, and X2A are the 5 haplogroups of the people that were here in the Americas pre-Columbus. Those are the haplogroups. If they running around here with some other haplogroup other than that it descends back to Africans, then they can't live the lie that they're living. They're perpetrating a fraud. If they can't show you their DNA, they are perpetrating a fraud. Then you said there was another person who showed you DNA, but that person ain't got nothing to do with it because they ain't even African descent. That's some of your colonizing friends that you like to hang around.
Oh, colonizing friends.
Yeah,
they're Native American.
Whether they're Arab,
they're Native American. Native American.
It isn't funny.
People. They're not answering me.
Oh, so they don't want to answer. You
got answering me right now.
Listen, call the group up. You know how to ring it. Call the group
I did just call.
Bruh, call the group up, bruh. Quit playing. Do I need to go holler at the Matrix guy and turn up?
What? You can go holler at Ivory. I told her to come. She was like, she'll turn your chat up, but I guess she's busy right now.
But listen, you know she busy. She's been having Thanksgiving dinner all day and doing all of that, but she so-called ain't none of them people.
Why
she ain't none of them people, but she running around here practicing other people. How's you running around here celebrating something that disrespects your people, bro? I don't get that.
Okay. Sean. No, you done now. I let us hear it ring. No.
Exactly. Only thing she gonna tell up is everybody gonna look at her like she crazy, and she gonna think she right. You don't see her bias spread all over the chat.
I should have her do a presentation. I'm going to have her do a presentation on why she is.
How? Well, what evidence?
What
evidence? I already listened to her. I already listened to. I don't want to listen to her lie to herself no more. She got nowhere to run. I specifically in 4 videos, 2 on here and 2 on Kofi Pie's side, had boxed people in to a specific locale to request information to prove who they say they are. They can't run from none of this stuff. There's too many points that have been made in all of the videos that actually curtail this. Now, none of this was physically inspired by you. This was something that was from a PhD that inspired the bulk of this particular conversation. But since I know that you had some of these pseudo, that you was big on saving pseudos, I kind of incorporated you a little bit to give it some validity, to go the extra mile to find the motivation, because I really wasn't even going to do that show earlier today with your boy, but because he cussed me out and he said all of those things about me, then he kind of turned me up a little bit, and I had to put him in his place.
All right. I mean, I understood that.
Jeremiah,
but I think that he still is.
Jeremiah says his Puerto Rican, his Puerto Rican fiance is indoctrinated. That's obvious. What other way would she not be? But go ahead. What was you saying?
Indoctrinated into what?
She believe all the pseudoisms, kind of like you. She's astrologyite.
Oh my God. Just because I follow astrology does not mean I use it as a belief system. Like most.
Subscribe
Like
to
most.
it. Oh, you
No, what I'm saying is that it is not. It's a belief system.
Now a contemporary practice for you. Okay, I
It's
got
not
you.
a contemporary practice for me.
Okay, all right.
I'm just saying it is true though.
Get your people on the hook. Can you get your people on the hook? Can we
She's
deal
not
with you?
answering. You
stuck on
get
side.
mad.
So you only got
Gosh,
one
so
person.
right.
You only got one person. So you only got one person, right? You didn't fill out. You didn't muted yourself.
The other people are not here today. Like they're not in my chat right now. I don't know where they at.
They all celebrating Thanksgiving.
That's kind of crazy though.
You got a panel full of.
Cause the one dude, he could tell you all about the corn people and everything.
The who?
The corn.
The who people?
The guy that made people out of corn.
Bruh,
Native American.
They didn't sit here and try
Native American folklore.
No, listen to me. They didn't sit here and try to Google. They try to sit here and Google some shit and then be like, yeah, what about such and such? Come on, man. You know that sound like some shit that they just.
I will send you this guy's thing. He got the little whistles blowing and everything. They be fighting over who is Aboriginal, who is not.
Listen to me. He ain't Aboriginal, and neither is the person.
A corn god. They make you laughing at that. The Bible believes people make people out of dirt.
I know
they
about
make them out of corn.
I guess what? I know about the corn god. But what you don't understand is that ain't got nothing to do with it. Because I can go beyond that. All right, so you know the corn god, but what's the language? I'm just gonna keep on investigating.
And they're gonna do the same thing because that's what they do to people who say that they're Abo.
They're not gonna be able to answer my questions. When they gotta go
what? The king of Aborigines?
Listen, ain't nobody in your chat been here. First of all, no one in your chat been here.
Okay.
That's a
I'm
fact.
in more than one chat.
I don't care what chat
you
in. Right? None of the people in any of the chats you in are indigenous to this land. None of them been here. Not a single one. And ain't none of them got supportive evidence to be able to back it up. They ain't got no story.
Africa.
How many stories have this person told you that talked about the corn god?
They tell stories all the time.
No. How many?
A lot.
Okay. So you mean to tell me that this person came in the chat and says on Thursday we talk about corn god, or does he talk about what time of the year the corn god existence or how they appease the god, and then what type of rituals or are centered around this deity and what type of practices are centered around this deity? Do they deify him in some type of sacred way?
He doesn't say it as if it's happening now.
Huh?
He doesn't say it like it's happening now. He
No,
just talks about their past things.
See, that's my point. You ain't understanding my point. My point is that they can go Google something and tell us about it. We all can go Google something and find out about a maze god. That's simple. But what are the interconnected pieces of practicing or relating this in a sense of a matter that helps us correlate it to our day-to-day lives? This is something that they don't think about. How I realize true is because I be watching Take Breath of Life from my spirit. I don't know what's due to this live, but I'm tuned in and it feels like the ancestors. I'm actually smelling a plantation. Hold up. Plantation, planty. The dark energy is real. Jeremiah, bro, I can't make out what you're saying in the chat, bro. My senses is tingling right now. Can you come on the panel and if you have time, brother Jeremiah, Sims, Clark Nature? Do you have time to come on and kind of clear up what you're trying to say in the chat so we can make sense of it? I feel like I'm a slave to evil energy, like the rest a war in spirit God 75%, the devil 25%. I can't make that out, bro. Can you translate that for me in English?
For a second, I thought she was talking to me. I was like, see, no, I can't.
I don't understand
I
because
don't
there's
speak too, though.
negative or evil energy here. So I'm trying to figure out what are you talking about? And then I'm trying to figure, you know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to get understanding from my brother. What he be going through something. I'm just trying to get some, you know what I'm saying? That's all.
I'm just drawn to your live.
Bro, I'm here to get some straightening, bro. There you go. Shit, that's what I'm talking about. What up, brother? What's going on with you, man? Let me get you in here real quick. All right. So hold on. Let me take Captain Saver pseudo off. And let me get you up here. Now, brother, what's going on with you? How you doing, man? Who what's your name? Where you from?
My name is Jeremiah. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay. Jeremiah from Charlotte, North Carolina. What's good with you? What brings you to the My Story Clan YouTube channel this evening?
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm good, brother. What brings you to the Masi?
Well, I subscribe to a lot of spiritual channels because I'm seeking spiritual freedom. And like someone was just telling me to go. This is a good time to go to YouTube and check out some spiritual, see who live, see who posted. And I clicked on your page and I felt something like because I'm in a relationship with my woman. She's Puerto Rican, and she like, can I talk?
Yeah, bro. Handle your business. Go ahead.
Yeah, she Puerto Rican. It's like I done literally sat here and seen her take the breath of life. I done been living and seen witches take the breath of life. So it is a spirit. But I feel like these females, I feel like it's a dark energy over the land, over what do they call it, Babylon?
Man, I don't know nothing about no Babylon, bro. I ain't even gonna lie to you. I think that's cap.
I don't know. What do you think it is?
I don't know, bro. I really don't know the energy or I don't know the situations or let me put it like this. I don't know what you're dealing with specifically with your woman that has you looking and seeking answers spiritually.
So what are you? So what like oracle? You know any oracles? Are you like an oracle?
Am I like an oracle?
Are you a prophet?
Yeah, you listen, bro. Listen, if you want some guidance from me, a reading from me, you want me to give you answers to your problems, then you have to pay a fee for that intelligence, and you have to follow.
Almost definitely. I can. What's the rate looking like? Huh?
And then you have to follow my guidance to a T.
Yeah.
So
I would feel like there's undercover societies out here telepathically.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna put you in a realm to where you'll be able to astral project your way out of ignorance and into intelligence and have an abundance of wit about yourself that would be able to propel you forward, so you'll be able to deal with things on a more natural world-based have more natural world-based occurrences in your life so that these things are not mentally affecting your ability to transcend into the man you want to become for this woman of yours, brother.
Okay. I'm down with it. I'm all for it. Whether that be us, whether that be the coming of our souls with each other, like, you know what I'm saying? Anything. I just want a more positive outcome on life. But what's your rate start with?
I can't disclose that on air, brother, because everything is personal and people are dealing with different circumstances in their lives. And therefore, you know what I'm saying? Your situation may be a little bit worse than other people's. And you know what I'm saying? Different strokes for different folks, my guy.
Okay, is there any way I get any type of contact information?
Yeah, I'm going to get all of that for you, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to get all of that for you, and we're going to deal with it the way we need to deal with it, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But first thing first, man, do you read books?
Yeah, I read a lot of books.
Okay, what type of books do you read, brother?
Like the Coming Forth by Day, you know the Pert
It's called the Ranu Perit M. Heru. It's the
book
of coming forth by day and by night.
Yeah.
Okay, why are you reading that book, brother?
Well, I'm just trying to get back to the sun, you feel me?
Okay, so if you're trying to get back to the sun, why would you read a book about becoming an ancestor in the afterlife, which means that you have to die in order to go through that process to become an ancestor? To get back, if you're trying to get somewhere, that's not how you elevate yourself, bro. That is in death.
Yeah.
And see,
so what do you like? Indian? What do you like? You like Native American?
Hell no, brother. I'm African, West African all day long. I know how to read Medu Nature.
See, I gotta get my my mom didn't want me to get my birth charts read, but I gotta get my birth chart read.
Your birth chart's read?
Yeah, like,
brother, you need to go get a DNA test.
Yeah, that's what it is. The charts.
Yeah, you need to get a DNA test. Every holiday they're on sales. You know, you can go to 23andMe. You can get your DNA done, brother. You can find out who you are so you can really know yourself. You can't,
you
know what I'm saying? You can't do nothing else. Now, you said that you're reading books, but this book that you're reading is about the Egyptian afterlife, and that has nothing to do with actually elevating you to where you're trying to go. So what other books are you reading, my brother?
I gotta read a lot of books.
Okay, can you name a lot of books that you're reading presently? You can only read one book at a time, but what are the books you're reading?
Let me see. It was one book about the Book of Enoch.
Oh no, brother, throw that in the trash.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, for real. Don't throw it in the trash for real. But stop.
Yeah.
What else you reading, brother?
What's up? Let me see. Let me check my book catalog real quick. Will it still let me be on here?
Please check your book catalog because we need to get some straightening.
Oh, the Anunnaki.
No, throw that in the trash, and I don't ever pick that up. If you're reading that, brother, you are reading misinformation. And this could be leading you astray, which would also explain why you're having the issues that you're having personally. You read that goes against who you are as a man, who you are as a person. You're dealing too much in the realm of outside of natural order. You're
Yeah,
delving into things that you are not privy to. What
yeah.
else are you reading? What else are you reading, brother?
The Alchemist,
The who?
the Alchemist.
The Alchemist. Show me that book, brother. Who's the author of that book?
Let me see. Let me go. It's a vampire book.
Oh, okay, that's something different. Okay, what else you read?
The Book of the Witch Moon.
So you're reading medieval books, vampires, witches. What else?
Yeah.
What are you reading about history?
What else I got?
Science book. Do you have any books related to science, or do you have any books related to history?
Who?
Do you have any history books? Do you have any scientific books?
I stopped doing that in high school.
Well, see, that's part of the problem. Is because when we're dealing with our natural world, we need to have proper research methodology in order to restore ourselves back to who we think that we really are. See, right now you're traveling in a world, you're traveling in a world of confusion. You don't know if you need to get off at exit 1, exit 1A, exit 1B, or exit 1C. And what I'm trying to get you to understand, with our proper research methodology, which is a tool used to answer real world questions, you will starve yourself from ever knowing how to come to an honest conclusion based on the available data that supports the actual argument. And what you just basically for me is that you're anti-science.
Oh no! When I was locked up and I was in the hole in jail, I was having dreams.
Real quick, hold on. You just can't say that, and then we don't gain no understanding from it. So, brother, you were locked up in jail. How much time did you do?
I only did 4 months.
So you only did 4 months in jail, and you was locked up in the hole for how long in the 4 months in jail?
2 months each.
So you was in the hole for 4 months in the hole.
Now I was in the hole, goddamn, like for 1 month. But what I was trying to say was, I was like astral projecting. I was in such a high vibration at the time. Like I was feeling like I was a pharaoh. Like I was hearing different spirits tell me to twist my locks and stuff.
You were hallucinating.
And what draw me to you was, I felt like when I got on here, you was a part of the ancestors.
Well, I appreciate that. So listen to me. First of all, you wasn't astral projecting, because that is outside of reality. And our ancestors don't even deal with that. That's somebody else's. Secondly, you were hallucinating under the assumption of such a thing, feeling vibrations and things like that. All of that is unscientific. This is why I asked you if you're reading science books, history books, because you need to reacclimate yourself back to a starting point that would help you advance knowledge and be able to solve your real world problems. Now, you said that you went to jail and you spent 4 months in jail. For whatever you did, it's none of my business or concern. But if you had tools that would be able to help you answer your real world questions, you could prevent yourself from returning to jail or being in situations where you can't advance forward in life. And brother, this is why I said the fee is the fee, because people got different circumstances and situations, and in order to bring you out of that, you know what I'm saying? You got to sock it to my pocket like a stock market. You feel me?
Yeah.
So I would highly recommend for you to start getting books that are associated with proper research methodology and allow you to be able to obtain knowledge in a way that you can absorb it and make sense of it. You shouldn't be reading a lot of different variations of books unless it's some recreational reading. But you need to develop tools. You need tools first that help you be able to answer these questions, and then you proceed forward in that. You can't sit here and, you know what I'm saying, and not deal with science and then expect for things that you talk about to help you in real world. You need answers to questions. You got problems. But if you're
Yeah.
not acquiring the tools to help you answer those questions that you got problems to, then man, you just wasting your time. And you're gonna put yourself in more situations that you don't need to be in realistically. You feel me?
And you saying it all starts with math and science.
Brother, I'm telling you, it all starts with science. You need, because science is going to teach you tools, the scientific method, proper research methodology. You need books like that that talk about methodology so that it'll help you develop an understanding. So now when you begin to read things, you'll be able to see immediately through the bull junk. Or even if you're conversing with a person like your indoctrinated Puerto Rican princess, you would be able to, kind of read through some of that stuff, and then you'll be able to say, well, babe, have you ever really considered to actually question some of these things to try to find the truth in it so that you can substantiate your position? And then she may say, I'm not really interested in that. I just want to hold my belief. And then respectfully, you will say, okay, it's your belief. It's personal to you. It's not personal to me. But just don't try to sell me on your belief, because you and I have different perspectives here. And I don't want to deal in the realm of belief. I want to deal in the realm of reality. See, I keep on answering these questions for you when, you know what? I'm like a lawyer right now, brother. You on the clock and you going to owe me some fee.
For real. And that's crazy. Before I came before the spirit told me to go to YouTube, I listened to the song and it's like the song in my head was like the lawyer, and now you the lawyer.
That's
How
what's up.
much I owe? How much I owe?
Bro, you're gonna have to sock it to my pocket like the stock market, man.
Man, I'll do anything, man. So I sell my booty.
Nah, bro. Listen, pause. Pause, brother. Don't say that. But listen, man, I appreciate you hopping on. I really wanted to ask you a little bit about some of the things that you actually said in the chat, and you actually provided some clarity, to some of the things that you was actually saying. So, you know what I'm saying? I want you to, I'm gonna kick you off the panel. I want you to hop back in the chat, and then, maybe, I need to send you some information via. You got Facebook?
Yeah.
What's your Facebook? What's your name on Facebook, brother?
Jeremiah Clark.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna send you. I'm gonna hit you. I'm gonna send you a message that may come up in your unread messages. It'll be from me, brother. I'm gonna send you a list of reading material that I think that should be influential to you, and hopefully you would obtain that reading material, whichever the best way you can, whether it's free online or otherwise. And then you start diving into that, and hopefully you'll be able to, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, pause. And hopefully you'll be able to start to obtain some of that information. And then as you see our shows, because if you continue to go all the way back to the start of the Marcy Warrior Clan YouTube channel, if you pay attention to our shows, you'll begin to obtain a body of knowledge and understanding that may suit you and begin to help you progress yourself forward a lot quicker. Until then, man, I appreciate you hopping on. You know what I'm saying? You're going to have to sock it to my pocket for giving you this game tonight. And I'm going to holler at you a little bit later, brother. All right?
All right, hit me up.
Yes, sir. All right, so who's next? You know what I'm saying? Who's next? You heard the brother. You heard the brother. You heard what he said. I'm taking him to my. Yeah, you need to. You need to recruit him. Honey Clark, you need to recruit him. That's the perfect place for him. Perfect place for him. Desmond crazy. He owes reparations for this knowledge. Facts. We'll pause it. Brother Lavelle is boy. Yeah, Des, I was. I don't need to go to nothing. I ain't sleeping. Sleeping. I don't do psychic readings. I do reality readings. Psychic readings for pseudos. I deal with reality readings. Sunline said selling one of my dogs. I don't think most people can afford some of the dogs, bro. Your forehead is low vibration. I'm elevating ignorance out of people to intelligence. That's what we do over here on the Masa Warrior Clan YouTube channel. We give people tutelages to help them be able to answer real world questions. Yo, brother, where you at, man? You back in the chat? Where you at? I ain't seen you comment yet, bro. Huh? Yeah, your readings is pseudo. I can't believe that Honey Clark brought the colonizers to Wakanda. I can't believe you did that to us yesterday. I ain't letting it down. Straight up. You brought the colonizers to Wakanda. And then you want to sit here and act like, you know what I mean? Yeah, all right. Niles Dad X, what's good, brother? This is turning into a real breakthrough. Oh yeah, you must be behind on the stream if you just catching up. All we do over here is breakthroughs. Jeremiah said, no pain, no gain. You're under dig. Captain Saber Pseudo is back.
I didn't bring a colonizer anywhere.
Changing the picture.
What?
What's good, Captain Saber Pseudo?
I didn't bring a colonizer.
You brought the colonizer
in my chat. The same chat I invited your friend to.
You brought the colonizers to Wakanda, bro.
I did no such thing.
You did such a thing, bro.
First of all, you put the thing in the chat.
No. I had no idea that you was bringing the colonizer to Wakanda.
I just put it in my chat. I didn't know that she would click on it.
Why would that person be in your chat? Though? You see what I'm saying? Like,
why?
What kind of recruiting you doing over there on your side that you got to include?
Recruiting.
Yeah.
Okay, so because we have a chat that's like, you know, I got the bar method, but then besides that, it's a chat that just talks about
I don't even want to know why you trying to come on here and advertise your Facebook group chat.
We talking about
we ain't no, bro. Listen, this
she's in that chat.
You're not finna no. Y'all keep all y'all.
She's in that chat.
Nah, you're not finna advertise that over here.
I'm not advertising.
Yes, you is. You ain't finna advertise that shit.
We done.
Now, is who in your back chat ready to get some straightening? Because you know, as you just seen, I'm I'm on the road tonight.
Nobody want to come talk to you, Sean.
I'm on the road.
I was surprised that Paul did.
You said what?
I said I was surprised that Paul did. Came up here and talk to you.
His ego drew him out. Because he really felt like he had a strong argument about something that he didn't have a strong argument about.
Y'all say that about everybody.
No. You heard it for yourself. So while you sitting when you sitting over here trying to, you know what I'm saying?
The people in my chat do not feel strongly about this topic.
Your people are pseudo.
You're pseudo.
Yeah, prove it. Let's go.
You're pseudo. And, not everything that you call pseudo is bad. Like, you act like because it's not scientific, it's bad.
Prove it, bro. Prove it.
No, you prove it. Like, you can't say it's like, okay, you like it's pseudo. You say pseudo like it's bad.
See, I can say you pseudo and then I can demonstrate it. You can say I'm pseudo when you get emotional. Let me cut Carl Thomas on. Let me cut Carl Thomas on.
No, don't cut no damn song. I'm not emotional.
All right, okay.
I'm just saying that pseudo does not mean bad. You use pseudo
right.
Like, that's pseudo. Yes, like it's just bad. Like it's
word is getting incorporated into something else. It does mean bad now. It ain't got no positive. It ain't got nothing positive behind it.
Just because it means it's not scientific.
Being pseudo is beyond not being scientific. It means you're intentionally ignorant. Nobody.
But that's not true. But that's not always true.
It is
true.
It's
something
true.
that is a pseudoscience. That is not bad.
It's true right now. You can't demonstrate nothing. All you can demonstrate is your upper lip in the chat.
Boy. What I'm saying is that it's not always bad because it's something you think is pseudo, like, religion, that's pseudoscience.
What's the name of the channel that you be doing presentations on? Listen to this, y'all. What's the name of it? What's the name of the channel?
Information age.
Well, okay, hold on.
Information age.
No, hold on.
No, Sean, stop, because it's more than just me on the channel. No, you can't do that.
No, hold on. Let's get some straightening.
I don't have time for you.
Nah, let's get some straightening. My screen is shared, ladies and gentlemen. And watch this. Information. That's what the name of it is, right? Information age, right?
Yes.
Okay. The information age is the idea that accesses to and control information is the defining characteristic of this current era in humanization. Okay. Watch this, y'all. Information age, right? Let me see if I can find it. Is it just information age?
Extra. No. Why are you extra?
What's the rest
you don't need to bring up our channel.
What's the rest of the YouTube? Okay, so
it's information age.
So you want to play? You see it ain't coming up on the screen. So what else is?
That's it.
You trying to play with me, bro?
And then it'd be easy for you
Sutek, put the information age link in the chat, bro. Why the freak would I?
Don't help him. Sutek, do not help him.
Sutek, put the link to their channel in the please, brother.
Do not help him at all.
Brother, please put the link to their channel.
For what? You don't need it.
Bro, put the link to it. Bro, please listen to me. Please help me find the information.
No. He don't need to help you.
Bro,
you
please.
All
right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Exhibit A. Okay? Exhibit A. Look at this. Keep this.
So ignorant.
Let's go. Let's see what they're talking about. God is light preliminary. 10 months ago.
That was a debate.
This is a good bit. Let's go to live shows.
Really?
Here we go. This
you fucking traitor.
This is what we got right here. Look, Jezebel, queen, or prostitute. What y'all arguing right here? I see you
We're
right
not arguing. I did a presentation on her based on biblical narrative.
Okay, we're gonna come back to that. Then she got the 42 laws of my religious. Oh my goodness.
Y'all,
look, was Margaret Sanger a racist who tried to exterminate black people?
That's a debate.
Keith said verse King Henry. That's a debate.
That's a debate.
Meaning of the word something. Let's check it out. Look, the origins of the Ankh, ladies and gentlemen. Look at Denise up there.
That's a debate.
Honey Clark up there.
They
had Shaka Amos were the Tainos civilized before the white man. I want y'all to pay attention. Ivory Scales responded
to the issue?
Which had
I'm trying to understand what's the problem.
Or Spain. Listen to the topics. Listen to the topics. Look, heretical discussions. Heretical discussions. What is
that? Had nothing to do. That was
What does heretical mean?
That was Greg's shit.
Religious hearsay.
Greg was a heretic, right?
You mean the dude, the footologist? the toe sucker?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Look, the return of Christ and why he came smoking weed and drinking.
Oh yeah, that's Christ Michael.
A heretical discussion again with the footology.
This old. All of that stuff is like from last year because that was before he died.
Look at that. The heretical discussion. Christians in the
context.
You see what I'm saying? I see where this is going.
Yeah, so where are you going with this?
Uncle called it the heretical discussion, the anti-theist with
he did the antithesis
with Bobby Banks.
But Uncle Moon, not Uncle Moon. That was a really good one.
Chill. Just relax.
That was really good.
Ethiopians are real Jews, not blacks.
What?
That's what y'all got on here. That's what y'all got.
Yeah, somebody does believe that. So because we give
y'all do shows on everybody belief, right?
No, what I'm saying is,
just said because you just said, you know what I'm saying?
If somebody comes forward and they want to try to present this information, the way that they want to present it, we do give them a place to do that.
Bruh.
Because you don't agree with the information,
bruh.
Doesn't mean that it's not something that can edify somebody else.
Once again, you said that I was pseudo, and then here we go.
Yes,
you justifying pseudo. You justifying.
I'm not justifying it.
Bro, you just said we give people a place
to I did not say that they were correct or that
Listen
they were
to me.
wrong.
You just said that you give people a place to come and get their work their pseudoisms out.
I didn't
Just
even
because
say
you
that.
agree or disagree with them doesn't mean
That's
that.
not what I said.
They can come on your platform and be able to do that. Women tell men his sex week on FB Live. Why is this on the channel?
I don't know. Because sometimes she do gossip things.
I don't even know who Nashville celebrity prostitute Red Hot is.
That's a girl boy.
Talking about coronavirus.
I don't know who that is.
Exactly. Ex-pastor Kevin.
I don't know who Red Hot was, but I know it's a girl boy.
What up, Sutek? You here, bruh? Where you at, bruh? Did you come in and come out? Dude said, are we living in the end of times, apocalypse, and whom mark shall you, whatever the hell? Red pill, morning coffee conversation. Men,
yeah,
right?
That was a morning coffee. It was in the morning, the conversation in the group about the red pill, blue pill people that Kevin, the manosphere.
Look at this. Look. Michael Norwick, a.k.a. Brother Polite, court appearance. I don't even know who this person is. Is that Ivory?
Yeah.
Adult conversation.
Is that Ivory?
I don't even know who this person is. Cashville Key. Never seen him a day in my life.
Okay, I'm not understanding what you're trying to say here, Sean.
I'm from Nashville. I don't know who some of these people she's showing. You don't know what I'm saying. You don't know what I'm saying. Look at the content. Here. Look at the content.
Hey.
Look at the content.
Okay,
here.
but did we say that
Do
we're
you now?
researching?
Hold on. Do you want me to press play on one of these videos and let my audience?
No, I'm not asking you to press play.
Do you want me to press play on any one of
I'm
these
not
videos?
saying that because
Our audience can
listen.
see. You call me pseudo.
But
You
okay,
know,
Sean.
but you call me pseudo.
Yes, it is because Sean. All
You
of those
call me
don't have
okay. Let
anything
me
to do
press
with.
play. Ladies and gentlemen,
No,
see what
Sean,
pseudo looks
stop.
like?
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Ladies and
saying
gentlemen, do you want to see
Sean,
what?
you're not pseudo. I didn't.
Do you want to see what fake science looks
Oh
like?
my God.
Yeah. Don't run. Nah. Don't.
Everything because you can't.
Don't switch up there.
You
Stay
cannot make
in
the
the thing.
channel. No,
Don't.
listen.
Yeah,
You cannot
exactly.
make the whole channel be something that I'm presenting. If we make the channel so the
so
other people
you want
can
me to play
present
my
it.
presentation?
No, what y'all have played that presentation enough.
Yeah, brother. You can do that.
Y'all get on my fucking
My
nerves.
nerves though with this snoring though. I'm finna kick him up out of here. You hear him, don't you? I be ignoring the heck out of Tyson.
Yeah,
Hold on, watch this.
you're the baby. Is that a midget doggy?
Tyson. Hey.
He said I'm a striker.
He put his head up. He was asleep. Somebody said his name, his little head pumped up. You loud, bruh. Open your mouth. Breathe out your mouth, because your nose is bored. It ain't working with you tonight. He looking out his crate. There you go. That's right. Turn around. Put your head back, face the other way. He's still gonna be loud. Damn, my damn. So, do I need to play the video for my audience because you called me?
You have already played it. They can go through the 4 videos you made on it.
Oh my
to see it.
crocodile tears. Let's see if y'all got some originals.
Oh my gosh.
Because
The
Ivory
point
says she Aboriginal. So what her video is about her being an Aboriginal?
I don't think. Sean, the point is that this doesn't represent all of our views.
What a dish record at?
It ain't on that channel.
Okay.
No. It's on the Facebook. I
gave y'all a shout out. I just showed people where y'all channel was at and all that, and you acting, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you trying to act crazy like, it's pseudo. No, there is nothing about us that says we're a research team. Never do anything else. We present the information that's fringe. And that some people would say is pseudo. What?
Whose information is fringe?
The information we bring.
Oh, so you said the information you bring is fringe, so therefore some people say that it's pseudo. Interesting. Yeah. And you admitted it right here on the show.
Yes, but that's the whole point in it. Because it's the stuff that you're not gonna find somewhere else.
I ain't got it. What a Greg song. Is the Greg song on there?
Greg song? It might I think it's on on Facebook.
No, it ain't on there, bro. I don't see it. Oh, see it, bro. Yeah, I can't do that.
It's on our Facebook. Y'all can join our Facebook page.
I ain't going on no Facebook. Trying to follow you on Facebook. Got it. Fuck out of here.
I'm Denise Worley. I said, you can go to the information age, not my page.
I'm straight. All right, so look, man, I'm about to kick Honey up off here, man. She ain't got no homework on the subject. Change the subject matter here. And plus, old boy in the chat. What's his name again, man? You need to hit him up. Hurry up and hit him up. Jeremiah
Clark.
Yeah, you remember that, John?
Maybe he did. Clark, but maybe
hit him up.
Maybe you should send him your books, your link to some books.
Yeah, we are. We're gonna get in all of that. He needs plenty of books ASAP. But yeah, you need to go on there and you need to hit him up on Facebook right now.
Who is everything is everything?
Don't worry about all that.
Nah, we talk too much stuff. Don't worry about all of that. The divine covenant. Look, I don't have a good day. See you.
And there y'all have it, man. Hope y'all enjoy the bill. Go back and rewatch it if you missed it. There's a lot of information and content available. But we starting how we leaving, ending how we started.